Hello, welcome. Today we have the 4th episode in the series where two humans, Sam and Voy, review Sam's code and try to understand Sam's journey of becoming a software developer. See, today's recording was very, very long. We spent about 4 hours talking to each other, and after cutting down all the unnecessary bits and breaks that we took during our call, it came down to about 3.5 hours of recording that we would like to show you. What it also means is that we also discussed quite a wide range of things during that call, some of them more relevant, some of them less relevant, but without a doubt this is the longest video that we actually managed to do, the longest recording. Anyway, the list of things that we did was actually so long that I prepared a little helper for myself to be able to read it out to you. So in today's video, we go over Firebase. Last time I gave Sam an assignment to create a Firebase authentication and file upload app. Very, very simple, very crude, not using any React this time. I feel that Sam has always been using React up until this point, so we wanted to see how is his non-React JavaScript DOM manipulation going. We've broken down this exercise into 2 sub-exercises. So it was exercise number 3 and 4. In the first one, it was only about authenticating and understanding Firebase's kind of basics using the console. And the second part was more advanced, and it was focused around utilizing the file upload and the Firestore database. Interestingly though, the second exercise, I also asked Sam not to use any walk-along tutorials. So it's very easy these days to just go on YouTube and Google, Firebase Storage Rules tutorial. And you'll get a guy or a girl explaining it to you for half an hour, and you can easily follow along. And I feel this is what Sam has been doing with some of the previous exercises, which isn't bad, as a concept, and it's amazing that we have all these resources that are helpful. But see, the problem is that Firebase is a very popular framework, library, whatever you call it, backend as a service. And it has very good documentation written by, people from Firebase. While sometimes you may find a task and a job that just isn't so straightforward, doesn't have good documentation, doesn't have a lot of tutorials that lots of people made about it. And I wanted to prepare Sam for that situation when you just won't have, walk-along tutorials that you could follow. So the kind of the extra challenge in this exercise was to only do it, or primarily do it, using documentation. I used Firebase myself. I know that their documentation is pretty detailed, so with enough time, I knew that this would be possible. The good news is that Sam actually did a very good job and managed to pull it off without much trouble. I was very surprised how quickly he gone over these exercises and how well he managed to go through them. So yeah, primarily today we'll be focusing on reviewing how that process went for him. How did he enjoy the difficulty that I added onto that challenge, and what sort of extra things that he struggled with came up during this extra additionally challenging exercise. Obviously we talk a little bit about just general meta, how to overcome some difficulties and stuff like that. We talk a little bit about dealing with frustration when building this kind of apps. We talk about building apps without React. We talk about the best way to go about, building an app without doing tutorials. And eventually Sam takes us to present his Firebase app, and we just dig into the code, try to understand what he built, comment on some of the mistakes that he made, learn a little bit more about async await and promises. Both of us, there is something I didn't know about async await that I managed to catch up on during this call as well. So I'm glad to hear that both of us are learning during these calls. Before finally getting into, just reviewing the entire app, talking a little bit again about Git branching. Actually, Sam got much, much better at doing Git these days, so his Git branches look pretty sleek. And then, get back to discussing next steps, seeing what we can do. The last probably hour of our discussion was dedicated to just figuring out what would be the next thing that he could do. We'd take maybe a slightly little turn on the idea that we had previously about Sam doing a proper portfolio project. So that may change in the next couple of weeks. We're going to do a review of that next time. But altogether, yeah, we're definitely closing in on the date where at least my ideas for what Sam could be learning are running out. I'm getting more and more confident that he should be ready to start applying for some jobs soon. So the discussion kind of navigates into that area slowly. So anyway, as always, hope you enjoy. Apologies for a very long video. Obviously, skip ahead to the sections and segments that you find enjoyable, that you are interested in. By no means I expect our viewers, you, to watch 3.5 hours of two of us, good mates, talking about things. It's very useful for Sam. I'm enjoying these calls a lot, but we do understand that the subjects kind of vary and that we get into quite a lot of different things. So the reason we're uploading these is just because we hope that there's at least some information useful for those of you that are learning anything similar to what Sam could be learning right now and also want to become software developers, web developers, whatnot. So anyway, here comes the 3.5 hours video. Enjoy! Welcome to the 4th episode of Sam and Void, discussing the career of being a programmer and the journey of becoming one. Good afternoon, Sam. How are you?
Good afternoon, sir. Or good evening, because you're on the other side of the planet.
I am, indeed. What time is it for you?
Half one. So just gone lunchtime.
7:30. So wasting my evening for you.
Yeah. And where are you in the world, Voy?
I'm in Cambodia right now. I got stuck here about 5 months ago, and I could never leave. It's actually not too bad. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, things are really opening, like now it seems that everything is open, including the tourist attractions around the city. So it's back to normal full time. I mean, it never really was locked down. It's only like some things were closed. So we wanted to go and do stuff and it would be closed. But now even like clubs are open and stuff.
Really?
I heard that they opened pubs in Britain again. And I've seen some videos of people fighting straight away. Sorry.
England. Yeah, it's embarrassing.
Yeah, but I think you guys are slowly opening up as well, aren't you?
We are, yes. Yeah, pubs and I think like hairdressers and a few places were opened last weekend. So it's getting busier, but we'll see what happens with the stats and the data.
Yeah, true. Although Europe altogether seems to be slowly getting out of it.
Yeah, as a whole, though I think a couple of places have flared up again.
Like what?
I want to say Barcelona.
Oh, have they?
Yeah.
Shit.
And Leicester. Yeah.
Out of all places.
Yeah. We'll see. Yeah, we'll see what happens, but
right.
Time will tell.
Yeah. Cool. So
yeah. So in other news,
let's talk programming. So Sam, last 2 weeks you've been working on the exercises I gave you, the Firebase exercises. How did you find them?
Really enjoyed them, thank you. Because this is my first play with authentication and also databases. So I guess interacting with a backend as opposed to like a public API.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed it. I mean, I liked the way that you restricted me using tutorials, which really helped me get used to working with the official docs. And yeah, I guess one of the challenges I had with that alone was knowing where to put the code, in as much that you can read the official docs and it says to set it up, just use this block of code. But then you've got to realize, well, whereabouts do I put this in my app?
Yeah.
So that was quite a good thing to test me on. As a whole, I didn't struggle too much with it. I think the last couple of challenges have really improved my intuition, and I've got more tools in my toolkit now. So the only times I ever really got stuck were just sort of minor things, which I was able to solve without YouTube, within an hour or two. So I enjoyed it. And I think I was just doing my reflection notes this morning because I'm going to add a README to each project that I host, just explaining what I learned, what the challenges were, and what I could improve. And I think control flow for me was the thing that I've improved on most with this, and especially utilising async and async await. So it's diving back into promises, which is, I guess it still is a weak area for me. I don't know exactly how they work, but I can get them working. But I think if you know exactly how they work, it makes working with them a lot easier.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose a lot of it is the control flow, like understanding how there is a virtual line somewhere in your code that executes right now, and that line will jump around your file a lot of the times, right? So understanding where that line is, where it flows, when it changes, when it has to wait on things, when it kind of fetches something and then resumes sometimes in the future, that is something that it's hard to understand at first. It's incredible you're getting better at it. But I would say even knowing promises really well, just like the definition of it and like the fundamentals of it, if your control flow like intuition is still not quite there, you still may find it difficult. Whilst if your control flow like intuition is quite far ahead, it's all about that. It's all about understanding when the function in then is going to execute, when the function in catch is going to execute, etc., right? So just getting better at that is all essentially these type of exercises are about. If you interact with APIs, big part of it is exactly this, like knowing that your code will halt, it will wait, and it will resume. And especially in your case, you have two steps there, right? You had to, in the second exercise, you had to upload an image and also at the same time upload some metadata about that image to a Firebase database. So you had two requests that had to go through. Did you execute them asynchronously? So they both went out at the same time and came back at different times? Or was it like the first one executed first and only after that the second one executed? Which way did you go?
I did it both ways. I started off doing, firstly I didn't use async because I hadn't twigged that was what was needed. And then once I rewrote the functions into an async function, I had both of them nested within there.
Yeah.
But they were, but I guess both firing off, coming back at different times, which would be fine if they both were successful. But one of the challenges I had was if the user's not authenticated, it won't upload to storage, but it'll still upload to the database. So I then had to retweak the code again to have that second function only fire if the first one was successful. So that's where knowing promises and control flow sits. So I think, I finished the project this morning, got it fully working, which I'm chuffed with, and then just spent the last hour just before this call just going back on async await. And I'd never really covered it because I didn't get promises a couple of months ago, so there wasn't really much point in going to async await. But just going back to that today, I'm like, right, I kind of get it now, and I can see why this is useful. And I think just that one of the challenges I was having was that I had the control flow in my head, but I couldn't execute it because I didn't understand how promises worked, if that makes sense.
Okay.
Like I knew the meta concept is go and do this thing, and when it comes back, then do this. But I was like, well, how do you know when it comes back? What's the syntax that you check with?
I got you. So like in your then function, for instance, how do you know if it was successful or not? Is that the sort of struggle?
Yeah, well, I think when you have, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, is previously I was using fetch with await. So the fetch brings back a response object which has an OK thing. So you can put if response OK as the conditional. But if I realized I wasn't using fetch, so then how was I going to check if that await function was successful? And I think what was happening is it was doing the function and executing it, failing it, but even though the function had completed, it was complete, even though the result was a failure. So then it was going on to the next function. I think that was what was happening.
Do you still have that code from that point? Because it would be really good to have a look at that as well and see that.
It would be on a previous commit.
All right, maybe we can dig it out and like look at that later, because it's a very interesting question you're asking right now. Yeah. So like you sending one asynchronous request using Firebase, and then it's returning a promise to which you attach your then, and you say, okay, well, if that function that I'm just calling is going to complete successfully, I want to execute the second step of my process, right? And your question is, okay, so how do I know that this was successful inside of that then, right? So it'd be really good to look at it and try to answer that question for you. I don't know, did you manage to answer it yourself, or?
No, I think I managed a workaround, because I think what I've realized this morning is that instead of having the two functions like parallel, I put one inside the other, if that makes sense. So it was almost like upload to the storage, then if that works, go to the second function. Whereas before it was upload to the storage and wait for it, but carry on and upload to the database and wait for that. Whereas now it's like only do this. If the first, I'll have a look actually. I think that's what I did. So I kind of went around it, but yeah, so I've got it working. There's probably a slight tweak I can do so it still waits for both functions to come back.
Okay.
But it waits for the first one, then it fires the second one, waits for the second one, then it says congratulations, all done. Which I think I've done. But but overall it was just a really I enjoyed the challenge, because I think what I've realized is, like I said, I've got that intuition. I kind of know what to do, and I know what to do if it's not working. And I didn't have that skill a couple of weeks back, and that was just frustrating as hell, because you don't know what to do. If that doesn't work, it's like, well, shit, I'm just gambling now. Well, let me try this bit of code. Oh, I don't know. Whereas now I know how to iterate and check and see what's going wrong, and I love it. It's like proper problem solving. So I've been really getting into flow state. I've had the music going. I've been whooping, hollering, swearing,
drum and bass.
But just enjoying it. Like the difference is, if something was going wrong a couple of months ago, I was getting angry and wanted to punch something. Whereas now I'm thinking, oh, you little bugger, I'm going to get you, and just carry on. And, I can, because it was really affecting my mood. I think that when I was getting frustrated by the code, when I finished the coding for the day, my whole rest of day was ruined. I was in a funk, I was in a mood, I didn't speak to anyone. I wouldn't say depressed, but I wasn't me.
I can recognize
Whereas now I can have 3 hours, still not solve anything, enjoy it, and the rest of my day just carries on as normal. So I've improved so much mentally from doing
fantastic.
these challenges.
Because that's what it is. Like, you get used to this. I think we must have spoken about this before. You just get used to the fact that this is your reality. You're constantly being challenged with problems you will not directly solve. And a lot of them will require like more than a day of input. So you will have to leave your work for that day feeling unsatisfied. And that's just part of the job, right? So like if that, absolutely can be very frustrating at the beginning, because you want to complete things. You want to have a way of saying, hey, I've signed off something today. And sometimes you can't. Like you definitely just made it halfway through, and you just have to remember what it is and pick it up tomorrow or a couple of days from now, or whenever is the right time, right? So it's a matter of getting used to it. The fact that you already are getting used to it is absolutely great. So welcome to the stage 2 of being a programmer.
Woohoo.
Good job.
Yeah, I really feel like I've gone through some sort of barrier. Like I'm at that next level.
Definitely.
And, it's just even if I do have like a 3-hour session and I don't solve it, all the routes that I've tried during those 3 hours has given me some experience and extra knowledge. Yeah. Which then, might not be used for another couple of weeks, but then I'll come to another thing and think, oh, I wonder if it's that thing I looked at that didn't work last time. That might work this time. And
see, and the amount of times you're going to wake up in the morning and just go, that's it. And you sit down 10 minutes and you've solved the problem. Yeah. Like these are just excellent moments when you go to sleep, somehow your brain figures it out while you sleep. You just wake up and do it, and it works.
Yeah. Well, funny enough, that's exactly what happened to me this morning.
Has it? Well done. All right, good man.
Because I was up at 5 a.m. randomly. I think because I went running yesterday, I was a bit dehydrated, by the by. But the thought came into my head at 5 a.m. and I thought, oh yeah, that's probably it. And it wasn't exactly, but it got me on the right path, and I was able to solve it within like sort of 10, 15 minutes this morning. Something that stumped me for 3 hours yesterday, pretty much. So it is fascinating how the brain can work its magic if you let it. Whereas if you stay at the screen and, come on, brain, work for me. As soon as you leave it and either go to sleep, do something else, the brain will just go, oh yeah, maybe it's this.
Yeah.
That's really fascinating.
True. So actually one thing I'm thinking about is, well, this was the first time you interacted also with Firebase console. So you were interacting with the Firebase API from your own code, setting up, those fetches, those requests, putting data on the database, etc. But at the same time, you had to sign up for the, Firebase account, right? And then create your project, just do all these sort of back-end things using their console. And I was just kind of wondering, how do you find that?
Not as hard as I thought.
Okay.
I guess, because you've got the official docs, you can kind of, it's, how do I explain it? I think now I can read code better. Looking at Stack Overflow answers and docs, I can understand what the code is supposed to be doing. And again, that's a skill I didn't have in the last two projects. Is like, even if someone gave me the answer and all I had to do was change 3 lines of code to get it working, I wouldn't know how to get it working. Whereas now I can look at the code, understand what it's doing, and then realize pretty much straight away what I need to change, if anything, to get it working in my context.
Okay.
So I guess when I did the first part of the tutorial, I did use a video walk along, so that kind of helps. But even then, it was in a completely different context to what I was building. So I still had to,
like it,
I guess, refactor that tutorial. But in the second half, it was like, no more YouTube, just go off the docs. And I think uploading to the database took a bit of a while just to understand mainly how databases are structured and how Firebase's database is structured, to understand what you're putting into what section and who gets access to what. But I think it's just playing about, and I'm getting now used to just scaling back and breaking down challenges. Like if it's upload the data and do this, it's like, well, let me just scale it back. Let me just see if I can even connect to the database first. And then if I can connect, see if I can do this little bit. And if that bit works, then try this and work back up to the original task.
Oh, that is excellent. That's exactly the methodology, mate. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I don't know if there are other like methods for approaching these kind of issues, these kind of problems or challenges ahead, but I can't think of ever tackling like a new library, new framework, new API, and not doing what you just described. So first thing is like, as little as I can, connect, do whatever minimum thing I could do, and then add on top of that another tiny step, and eventually you arrive where you want to be in the end. If you're really familiar with a particular workflow, maybe then you can kind of skip forward a few steps at some points, or takes bigger steps each time as you do it. But the whole principle is there always, and I wouldn't be surprised if majority of developers do things exactly that way when they're faced with doing something they haven't done much of before. So well done, having figured it out yourself. Good job.
Yeah, I'm pleased with my progress. And again, I want to thank you for such a well-curated exercise, because between these chats, you've found where my areas for improvement are and created a challenge with specific areas that raise that bar a bit. So
cool.
Because you could have just set a random exercise, or I could have just gone off and done something random, but this specifically developed the muscles that were weaker.
Yeah.
And also just experience, because I hadn't had experience working, and I guess posting, putting stuff in a back end. I've only ever consumed a public API. So I just want to thank you for, curating that challenge, because it tested me. The challenge and my skill are around the same level now. Whereas, like I say, a couple of months ago, the challenge was here and my skill was just like, this sucks, I can't do it. But slowly it's getting here. And
mate, frankly,
level now. Yeah, sorry.
I think the edit really helped. I could really see a lot of improvement going on in there. Like your JavaScript definitely went up. I haven't seen the code yet, but just from seeing what you've been doing,
Yeah.
And the fact that now, the previous exercises you maybe struggled with a bit, and now these new ones you don't so much. I kind of want to attribute some of that to you doing those couple of weeks just at a bit, day by day, isn't it?
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah, I'd almost forgotten about that. But yeah, just doing those bog standard, how to write functions and knowing how to write the syntax of functions. I kind of knew the concept. It's like, I need to get a function that does this. It's like, okay, well, how do you actually put that in JavaScript? Let me go and check something. Whereas now, I did a lot of this actually without referencing stuff, just did it from my head. Like, declaring a function expressions, conditional logic, scope, all these kind of things are starting to become second nature now.
Yeah. Perfect. Well done.
So yeah, I would say I would give Ed a lot of credit in terms of just working that speaking muscle, as I keep saying.
Yeah. That's a good way to put it. And we also did set this challenge up without React. So that was to promote you kind of getting used to manipulating DOM a little bit. Because I remember last time we spoke, you mentioned that you wanted to put that on the list as well, to just do like a refresher on that. So I think in this case, even more like we maybe even touched on some things you might have not experienced before, like doing some event handling that normally React would have, taken care of for you. And you just attach, your functions to where React tells you to put them, right? So here you had to respond to user selecting an image, then clicking submit, putting in the filling in the forms and hitting submit. So how'd you find that? How'd you find manipulating DOM and responding to it?
Again, well curated, because you're right. I'd looked at events and event handlers and DOM manipulation months ago, but never built anything with it. So it was like I understood it at the time, and then a couple of weeks later, that knowledge was gone.
It's gone, isn't it?
And then in React, you don't deal with it directly. So this was really cool practice, just because the other thing is, when I was doing DOM manipulation the first time, my JavaScript knowledge was minimal. Like it was around the time I was building websites with HTML, CSS, and maybe 3 lines of JavaScript. So I didn't know what it did. I didn't understand functions. I didn't get it. I just got a rough idea of it and thought, oh shit, that looks well odd. I'm not looking forward to when I actually go and learn JavaScript. But now I know JavaScript, going back to that DOM manipulation is like, I get it. It makes sense. It's just I haven't done the syntax that often. So this was really cool, looking at event listeners, event handlers, and storing and using variables, which that whole concept I had no knowledge of when I was doing DOM manipulation. Yeah,
right, because you just define your component in React and everything is stored within that component as a state. And that's your mentality working with that environment all the time, that your data will be persistent because you put it in that state. And you started using even context managers, right, to figure out how to put these things across. When you strip all that layer away and all you have are native vanilla JavaScript variables, you have to put them somewhere. They have to maybe interact between different files you may be having. And even more so, you had a couple of pages that I think were using the same data. So figuring that out. That was kind of part of why I wanted, this challenge to also put you there. Being clear that you probably will not do a lot of that in the future. Once you jump on a framework, you rarely, I guess you wouldn't do it as often as if you didn't have the frameworks, obviously. But it's kind of one of those things that we spoke about last time. You just want to say, I done it. I know where it is. I don't have to know it by heart, but I've done it, and that's enough. And I can carry on and just put it on my CV or whatever else, right? So I'm happy you went through that.
Yeah, no, it was super cool. And I think, even another challenge I had with this was, I guess, managing my JavaScript logic, because the first part of the challenge was just one page, like the sign up page. So you've got your event listeners and your handlers for that page. But then as soon as you introduce a second page, and the logic for the sign up page is also on the same JS file as the login page, depending on which page you're on, it'll say, why are you telling me to look for this thing? It doesn't exist. And if you're on that page, it says, why are you telling me to look this thing? That doesn't exist. So I was like, shit, how do I manage? Where do I put the JavaScript? Do I put it in the HTML? Do I link a different file on different pages? Or is there a way I can keep one, consolidated JS file that doesn't cause me any errors. And that's what I actually spent a bit of time working on. And again, got it working. Not sure if it's the most effective way of doing it, but just by a bit of Googling and a bit of tweaking, I got it so the logic wasn't missing on the alternate pages, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. That was also
again. Yeah. When you're following along tutorials, you're copying a guy not really knowing why he's putting stuff where.
Yeah.
And I think that's been another really good learning process here, is understanding where to put stuff. So it's control flow, I guess, also for the JavaScript, and placement of code blocks.
Mm-hmm.
So again, just more muscles.
Absolutely. Some time ago, I realized that a very good way to do tutorials is to always change something about them so that you do it your own way. So you still are pretty much being given code on a plate that you can just almost copy paste, but you have to change a little bit of it. And it could be as simple as, let's imagine that somebody is storing, I don't know, some indices as integers or as numbers, right? And you decide to store them for some reason as strings, or I don't know. It's in tutorial. It's a list of object, and you change it into like a dedicated data structure object that just holds the same data. It's not arranged in a list, but it's arranged as member values of that object. Whatever, you just do something your way. Mm-hmm. And I started doing it a while ago when I just realized the way that tutorial was going about something that I was already quite confident about in Python in this case, it just didn't work to me. I just knew this sounded like a bad idea in Python. So I was like, I'll do it my own way. And the moment I did this, it meant that from then on, and it still was like 3 months, from finishing that course. So I still had plenty of work to do, but every time they would introduce something new, I had to take the code they gave me, because they essentially feed you code in a lot of these tutorials. Even in paid courses, they'll just give you code. But then translate that to the way I built it using my data structures, right? And when doing so, you really have to ask yourself these questions that you've been asking yourself right now. Where do I actually put it? How does it function? I can't just go and copy paste it and forget about it and move on, because that's the whole problem with the tutorials, that you think you're achieving something because by the end of it, you have a functioning page, a working functionality, whatever it is that you're trying to implement. But if there is this extra step that the tutorial will never cover, that you set for yourself, that you add to it on your own, if you have that in place, then, to me, it felt like a very practical and effective way of really, really getting into understanding what the tutorial is about. What is it teaching you? Because if you didn't understand that, you couldn't translate it to your method. You only could copy paste it. That's as far as it goes. If you don't understand what it does, you just give up, right? But so that by the time you finished the tutorial, doing it a tiny bit, but doing it your way, you really get it. You only would have gotten that far if you really understood what the tutorial was about, because otherwise you wouldn't have translated it over. So that's I don't know if I even told you about this at some point in the past, but that's one piece of advice that helped me a lot in just getting
it makes sense. I've never done it that way, because I've usually just jumped onto the next tutorial. But one thing I did notice actually was when I was learning CSS and I was following along with tutorials, and they would give you, they would give you the code for the final layout. I would pause the video and say, right, let me see if I can do this hero section myself. And I would not watch the tutorial. I'd have a reference to know what I was aiming for. And I learned a lot from that. So although I was following the tutorial, I was jumping ahead and predicting how he would do it.
All right, yeah.
I'd never done that before in JavaScript until these last couple of weeks. I remember, I think it might have even been the first Firebase challenge, that first tutorial I looked at. I saw what he was doing and went, all right, pause, let me see if I can do this next bit. And I got it working. I was like, yes, I've never done that in JavaScript before. So that's a sign that I kind of know how to implement the stuff now.
Did they do it the same way as you did it, or did they do it differently?
Yeah, word for word. I mean, it wasn't massively difficult, but it was a noticeable, I guess, threshold for me that I was able to pause a video and proactively go ahead because I knew how to drive. Rather than watch the video, watch him do it, and then go, I understand it, which I did, but I couldn't have done it on my own.
Yeah, definitely. Tutorials are good for setting you back on the right tracks rather than actually sort of be the source of knowledge, I feel, right?
Yeah.
If you along the way really put your brain into a state of figuring it out, if you do put in the effort and try to find how can you do the thing that you're trying to learn, and only use the content in the tutorial when you just give up, when you like go blank, or when you navigate in a path that doesn't make much sense and you want to catch up with things. So you watch a bit of the tutorial like you did and confirm whether you went the right way or not. Yeah, if you do it that way, it's much more reasonable to get something out of it rather than like you were saying, right? Like getting into tutorial hell and like never relearning anything. It's something you've been repeating a lot, weren't you? That you went through all these things and you didn't know how to do them, right? You completed these tutorials that even though you have an app that you built that utilizes this particular technology, you don't know how to build with it because like all you did was almost copy pasting the code, right? Yeah. Hey, some clever words from
I mean, I will mention that to anyone else who's learning to code is take the stabilizers off as soon as you can. Those are the words that I picked up, and I wish I'd have done it sooner. I mean, I don't regret my journey because it's got me to where I am now, but it probably would have helped to do that sooner. But who knows? But yeah, just building up the muscle to be able to do stuff on your own.
Cool.
That's where you get then the skills to be able to do stuff on your own and not have to look for, what can I build, or let me copy what someone. It's like, no, what do I want to build? Let me see if I can go and do it.
Yeah.
And that's when you're going to learn. And that's why I've done most of my learning is stuff that didn't have directions. Try and work it out for yourself, mate.
Yeah. Essentially, yeah. I think one last thing worth mentioning before we jump into code is that the reason we did that second part of the exercise without using any tutorials is because as much as it is important to understand libraries and frameworks that are big and well known, where you've got plenty of resources that you can dig into, there will be challenges ahead of you where you don't have all these resources, and to find out how can you utilize a particular library, particular framework without, some guy doing, YouTube videos about that particular subject. I feel it's a very key piece of knowledge that I wanted you to at least give a shot. So it's helpful that Google documentation is actually really good. Firebase in particular, it's excellent. They just cover so much. So it was still an easy sort of challenge, within that scope of doing something without YouTube tutorials. You'll quickly see the moment you pick up some kind of obscure GitHub library that has barely any documentation, if any, and try it from there try to put something together. That's the real challenge essentially. But my aim here was to get you to at least attempt going that direction and work on that muscle. When you just don't have any pointers, you don't have anybody guiding you, all you have is this enormous document. And Firebase documentation covers so much more than what you needed. So it was about reading through it, going through that little menu on the side and like figuring out, what am I looking for? Firestore, web, and then within there, creating documents or whatever else they called it, right? And like trying to go into these levels, finding where this information is. It's clear to you, I'm sure, but we said it many times that programming is about searching for information. Like if you know how to search for the right thing, you'll be a good programmer. And working on that muscle is as important as understanding, how is array structured in your memory, or what are objects, what are classes, all that shit, right? Just searchability is just so key when you program. And you're like, familiarity with that process. I feel it's something that a lot of people will skip because they just get solutions on the plate. Like if you think about it, right? If today I'm going to set off and start learning React, I've got everything I need. Like I'd have to really try not to understand, or like not to lack solutions, right? I can just go through a million tutorials on YouTube or actually just written tutorials that will take me step by step doing all these things. And maybe I'll learn along the lines, but what if you try to learn something that isn't so well covered, that you will a lot, in coding, especially in web development, when you've got so many third-party libraries, right? You will get there. Well, that's the point you get stuck on. And I think this is also something I want to focus with you a little bit more, and maybe we'll talk about that properly later. But I realized, it would be good idea to like maybe do a review of how are you on that sort of soft. I don't want to call it soft skill because we're not soft skill in the sense of, I'm a good communicator and I work great in a team. And my biggest drawback, what was the one?
Weakness.
My biggest weakness is that I'm a perfectionist. That's the one. Bullshit. Right? So not that sort of soft skill, but talking about soft skills more in a sense of, like if I give you a challenge that you have no idea about, what's your thought process? Right? Which way would you go? What would you Google? What was the first line of code you would write? To ask you some of these questions. Maybe not today, but maybe we can do it next time. I said, we'll talk about it later when we get to figuring out the next steps.
Yeah.
But that's why I realized, when I want to say it, I let you go, and you actually do end up working for someone and being in a company. When that moment comes, I want to know that at least you have some basis of, well, I have no idea, but if I at least walk that path, I may find some solutions. That's essentially,
cool.
The thought process here.
Yeah.
And I feel that's what we've been working on a little bit in that second exercise to get you.
I guess problem solving skills.
Yeah.
Dependent on what resources are available.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah, sounds cool.
Okay, so I suppose now we can just dig into the actual code and see what you've been building over those last couple of weeks. The exercise number 1 and number 2. I believe they're all now merged into just one project, aren't they? So we'll just be looking at the final product.
Yeah, basically, challenge 3 and 4 I just merged into one project. Yeah. What do you want to look at? How does one do a code review, Voy?
Right. So actually, when I was in uni, one of my professors told me that if you can't explain something in a minute, you don't really understand it well. So if you had a minute and you have to get me up to speed on this project, which way would you go? That's the question. I'm actually encouraged to give you the answer straight away because I don't want you to be just guessing it. What I would do is overview what files there are. So like go through the project structure and just tell me if there's any important files. Like I can tell the app.js is going to be somewhat important, to give me a brief, one sentence, what does it do? And if everything is inside of your app.js, then kind of, go through chunks of code and like say, this is where I do, authentication, this is where I do databases, et cetera. But you want to go sort of, big picture. Okay, I've built this app. I have these files here and here, and this file does this here, that here, that here. That's sort of the 1 minute, introduction, so-called, what do you call it? Elevator pitch? Is that what it's called? Yeah.
Yeah, I reckon I can do that.
Go on then, 3, 2, 1, and Sam Chilcott, elevator pitch.
Okay, so may I introduce my app called Firebasic? It has 3 main functions. Sign up for an account in Firebase, upload a file to Firebase Storage, and upload some data to Cloud Firestore database. That's the main overview. It's 2 basic pages, a sign up page and an upload page. And I guess there's 3 main functions, which are the sign up, upload to storage, upload to database, and they're all in one app.js file, mainly split into sign up function and 2 upload functions that work together. And that is how it works.
Lovely. So you have the index.html and upload.html. These are the 2 pages you were describing, right?
Yeah. Or you could consult my README document, which has an overview on it.
I have to admit.
This is what I was doing this morning. Yeah, a user workflow.
Nice. And you're doing it in Markdown as well? So
in Markdown, yeah.
Good you know that. Yeah, perfect. I have to admit, you picked up the ball much better than I did when it came to changing Firebase into a funny word, because I went with Firebasing, and I think Firebasic, it's much better. So well done on that.
That's all good.
It would be good to see like just an overview of your folder, like, where all those files living. So if you could show me that. All right, so that's what we have. Yeah. So I would,
Yeah.
When I do a code review, just want to quickly refer back to that. I would show this, and I would like point at each file as I'm speaking about it. That would be my way of introducing an app. And if there's a ton of files, then I would like, just hover over some of them and like try to go over that. If you have folders, obviously, then even easier that this way.
Okay, yeah.
But that's very useful to see. Okay, you've got 2 pages. I can see HTML. I have a main JavaScript file, the app.js. Everything else is territory. And I already get a very good context of where things are, right? Because just looking at your VS Code, I don't know if these are all the files that you have just because you have them open. So I understood you did, but if you want to make it clear to your receiver, right, you probably want to show the project structure, which normally would be just your folders and files in general.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, perfect. So do you want to take us through the index.html and uploaded.html? Because I'm thinking that the app.js is going to be more complex. Although maybe is there anything I should read in the README? Because if you did put effort into that, is there something I should read inside the README?
No, it just explains some of the, I guess, the control flow. So here on the sign up page, you either get a success message if it goes okay, or you get an alert requesting to sign up for an account if you don't have an account yet.
Okay.
So that's like an embedded feature.
Right.
No, there's nothing extra in there, but it just gives, the way I wrote this was just like a workflow of, if it's not overly obvious what the app does, then this can show the steps and the possible outcomes by using the app, albeit it's only 2 pages and it's super simple.
No, that's good. Getting used to writing some sort of documentation, absolutely great. Okay, no, but in this case, we can definitely jump into the HTMLs and see. How
so super basic. I can also show you a live version of it as well, or would you prefer to look at the code first?
Let's look at the live version first. That's a good idea. Yeah.
Cool. Okay. Right. So if we go to, can you see my screen all right?
I can, yes.
Okay, if we go to the sign up page then. So it's super simple. There's no styling on it whatsoever. It's just a simple form that takes in an email and a password. So we'll do this now. What I'll do is I'll deliberately get the password wrong. It needs 6 characters. So when we click submit, we get an alert saying the password should be at least 6 characters.
Okay, I'm going to stop you right here. Just a quick question before we carry on. We'll look into that later, but you're displaying this message because Firebase has returned you an error, right? Like Firebase told you that this is a short password. You didn't check it yourself. No. Cool.
That's built into Firebase.
Okay.
But I utilized their error object and displayed it in my would that be it? My API?
In your client. This is
okay,
the client,
Yes.
That's
because I know that was part of the functionality in the spec, but when I looked into it, I was like, oh, Firebase already does that. Let me just nick what they already do.
Yeah.
Because that error alert is one that I bespoke typed. It's my text plus what Firebase says, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So
I guess I piggybacked.
Very good. Just probably to say it right here, in the future, it is probably a good idea to do both. Although I'm glad that for this exercise, you just do it on the Firebase end, because we wanted to get your experience with like working with an API returning errors. So the fact that you went this way is perfectly fine. But just so that we have it said, in the future, you probably want to do a little bit of that checks on the client. And then, if in the end, it passes your client side checks, but nonetheless returns an error from, the API you're working with, then you want to display that as a further type of an error. Also because it's faster when you think about it. If you don't have to send the request and wait for the response, you can just straight away say it's short, like fix it. It's all happening on the client computer, client machine, whatever it is, right?
Makes sense, and I can probably figure out how I would do that anyway.
Yeah, but like I said, don't worry about it.
That's cool.
Don't worry about it now.
So password's fine. Congratulations, new account added. So that will have then created a new account in the Firebase authentication, and then when I click OK, it clears the file and automatically moves us to the upload page, which is the second page.
Yeah.
Where we can choose a file. Again, just using can't remember. I guess this is the file API, as they call it.
Why did you choose my pictures to do this?
Why not?
I was watching.
I knew you'd be watching my videos.
I was watching, like, which fucking photo did you choose? I'm glad none of them come up.
Nabbed it off Facebook.
I would have found like the most obscure and embarrassing one and make it display.
I did. Your Facebook profile.
Oh, it's not too bad.
I'm joking.
Good one. All right. Anyway.
So submit it, and you've got the console logs here, just so I know that the 2 uploads have done, and then the alert then comes up and says file added to storage, and the metadata is added to Firestore.
Cool.
And that's the most simple workflow if everything goes to plan. But if I was to then go and delete everything out of the authentication,
I guess if you just refresh the page, right, that should also unauthenticate you.
This would be good. I haven't tried this one, because that was one of my questions. I made a note in the app was how does the app know who's signed in and for how long?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and I guess
it still works. Okay,
it still works. So it's persisting somewhere.
Yes,
but that would have been interesting, because how, like, say I'm not Sam at Sam Chilcott anymore, and I'm another user. Would I then upload into a different account, and how does it work? But these are questions I didn't have to worry about.
No, it's actually a very good question. It's almost like, how is that, when you go to Facebook, you're always logged in, or you go to any service, you're always logged in as the last user that you have been. And how is it that sometimes some services ask you to re-log in, right? That happens, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So essentially, we're talking about, I don't know if we refer to this as session management directly, but I'm almost entirely sure that it has to do with the cookies, probably the word you've heard of before. Yeah. I could be lying to you entirely right now, because frankly, you have libraries taking care of that side of the web for you these days. Essentially, it's a bad idea to implement things like authentication these days, simply because there are like third-party libraries that do it in a secure way, and you probably will forget something and you'll like leak some data. That's not a good idea. So there is a kind of consensus that use sort of big names that have done it right, and Google, Facebook, GitHub, whatever else you may be wanting to use. They figured it out pretty well. I mean, well enough, and definitely better than whoever else, would be trying to do it from scratch. Yeah. So, which is why, I don't know it from the top of my head. You probably will not have to know it, but just to get like a refresher, it would be a good idea to maybe try to figure it out and just get an idea. How is it that it stays logged in? My first kind of, out of top of my head answer here would be that Firebase handles it for you. So whenever you do log in, it will store that cookie somewhere, and when you're back on this page yet again, it just looks for that cookie. It can find it, so it will not prompt you for authentication again. I'm guessing this. It could be any other way. So I'm sure it's in the Firebase doc.
I was going to say I could check the official docs.
Yes, but that's actually why that's why I put it in an optional part of the exercise. So I wanted you to dig even further and try to figure out how this authentication works. But these are great questions you're bringing up right now. So but it's great. It works.
Local storage and session storage are on my list of things to have a quick look at. But so hypothetically, what I would do is I would just go into Firebase's authorization, all the emails, delete them all, come back to the upload page, and then try and upload. And what it used to do was not allow the storage upload, but it would still send to the database, which was pointless because the guy isn't logged in.
Right.
So then that's when I had to retweak my code. So if the storage failed, the database wouldn't execute.
So if we have this error scenario where your storage fails, but it still would send the request to the database, would that second request succeed, or would it fail too?
No, it would succeed.
Oh, that is bizarre.
Because it wasn't, the way I'd written my code was that it wasn't dependent on the first one. It was almost like a separate entity.
Yeah. Okay, so it's probably due to the fact that your database is set up in a way that it accepts requests that are unauthenticated, whilst your storage doesn't, isn't it?
Here's what I found whilst Googling this challenge, is that the Firestore and the storage aren't connected. And this is like a big thing. It seems like quite a big deal, and there seems to be quite a few threads about it, is they're not connected.
Okay, very much yes, so absolutely. But in what way that's surprising to you?
Well, for example, it let me upload to the database, but not the storage.
Okay, yeah.
So if they were connected, it would have blocked uploads to both.
Yes.
You would think, because they're part of Firebase.
Yeah, no. So very good observation. Maybe let's jump onto that, because that's a very good point you're bringing up. Do you want to open your Firebase console and we can have a look exactly why was that happening?
Yeah, let's have a look.
I'm going to say a keyword that maybe will get you closer to finding the answer. Have you seen the rules on Firebase Storage or Firebase database? Have the word rules come up before?
Vaguely rings a bell. I might have even made a note of it.
Okay.
Okay.
I'll show you where it is, and it all makes sense.
Right,
but a very good observation. Yeah, they are separate. Yeah, they're services of the same sort of provider, but they not only work in a slightly different way, but it's not like you've authenticated for Firebase and now you can do anything. And in general, in modern web, it's a slightly advanced concept I may be talking about right here, but you don't permit everything by default. And even more so, just because you permitted one thing doesn't mean you permit other things as well. So you get quite selective about your permissions. It's kind of like on your phone. I'm not sure if that happens on iOS as well, but like on an Android, each app has to explicitly ask you for each permission. And it can't just do it, all together. I just want permissions to everything. No, it has to ask you for your phone data, for your camera access, for your mic access, all these different things separately. So it's a similar principle here, right? That in modern sort of, authentication handling, your users have to sort of be very granular, or like your permissions have to be granular. And in this case, granularity, I can't say the words, granularity, is expressed in a way that, database is one authentication, storage can have completely different authentication rules applied to it. Yeah. Something to keep in mind more than anything.
No, makes sense. If I delete all my users, then
I mean, keep them in place just for now, because I want to point you in that one place, and then we'll talk about the users. Right after that. So if we go to database, I want to show you where these rules are, and that'll start making sense to you very quickly.
I think it's a tab.
It is a tab, exactly. That's the thing.
Okay.
And you will find, I think you will find a similar thing in storage. So here we can see these rules, right?
Yes.
It seems confusing at first. Don't worry about it. I can tell you that they're much more straightforward than you think. It takes a while to get used to understanding what these Firebase rules are, but it's a pretty clever system altogether. So if you now go to storage, just to double check that we see rules in storage too.
So I've just read this sentence here. This rule allows anyone on the internet to view, edit, and delete all data in the Firebase database. Okay. Correct.
Actually, don't just click away. Can you open a new tab? Like keep on database rules and open a new tab with storage, storage rules. Yeah, and this way we'll be able to compare them. And see why is it that one of them worked, the other one didn't. All comes down to what you observed. Absolutely, it was the fact that they are separate, and you'll also see that the rules for them are different. That's why you've been seeing that one of them would have failed, but the other one still carried through. Yeah, we can see it already, right? The Firebase storage rules. And a similar interface, but they're quite different, aren't they? Yeah. So let's go back and switch to the Firebase database, and let's just look at these because they're a little simpler. So ignore all of the lines. I mean, obviously, it's useful to read what's between 5 and 12, where it says, everybody on the internet can view, edit, and delete all the data in your Firebase storage. But then it actually says it is useful for getting started, right? But it is configured to expire after 30 days because if it leaves your app open to attackers. Even more so, if you left it this way for a month, you will start getting emails from Google telling you you have an app that has its API exposed, go and fix it, because otherwise, it'll stop working. Essentially, they will stop the database. And it's all due to the fact that, that on line 14, they define this one rule that provides us with an answer here. It says allow read-write, okay, if the request time is before 30th of July 2020. You can see that timestamp date. That's just definition of some timestamp object that the rules are expecting to see. I don't think this is a standard JavaScript timestamp or anything like that. This is probably their own built-in. And you'll be able to read about that in the docs. It's quite well documented, right? So all it says is, allow reading and writing if, and by this it also means, modifying. Essentially, read and write in this context is, allow everything. If, at the time that somebody's making that request, we're still before the 30th of July 2020. And that's all the rules we have, right? Now, if you go to storage rules and we try to read them, we'll understand what's the difference.
Quick question.
Yeah.
Are these rules currently in place, or would I have to paste that code somewhere?
No, they're in place. This is it. Yeah. This is where you can edit them. You can edit them in different places, but that's a lot more advanced. We won't get into it yet. But what's written here is the rules. So now here, again, ignore everything apart from this case line number 5 when the actual rule is being defined. And we say, allow read and write if request.auth, which is short for authentication, is not null. It means any requests that are going to storage, if they're authenticated requests, if authentication is not null, therefore if authentication is defined, only then allow them. So what was happening is that you're trying to use these two different services. One of them requires you to be authenticated and one of them doesn't. So your storage fails and your database doesn't. And there's nothing wrong with you doing them both in parallel. I would even say it's great you did them in parallel. And I would even encourage you, maybe if you want, to go back and try to modify them so they would work in parallel. And simply to solve the problem of, first of them failing and the second one not failing and carrying on, is to change these rules so that both of them would fail, right? Because that's the way you probably want to protect your app, is that your users are authenticated. However, this is us doing it on the back end, as you probably know. Just as we were talking about, figuring out whether the password is right or not. Here we're doing similar thing. We're figuring out if the authentication is accepted or not using the back end. We're sending the request, and the back end tells us, no, something's wrong. You're not authenticated, so that's not okay. And similarly here, it would be good to do that type of basic authentication check on the client. To simply say, before we even allow you to send any requests through, before we run these two functions, whether in parallel or not, or in sequence, before we even get to that point in code, let's check if we're authenticated. And I bet if we went to the Firebase docs, we'll find the answer for how we can do that.
Yeah.
But that's the idea here, right? That we want to prevent these things from happening and just display some error message straight away, right?
Yeah. And thinking about it, if I remember rightly, when I first looked at that sort of entry-level Firebase tutorial, this would have been the next stage, was restricting access to certain people. And I never obviously got into that, but this all makes sense. And I quite like the concept of being able to, I guess, control stuff on the client side before it even wastes the back end's time almost.
Essentially, yes.
Or vice versa, even, or use both combined as a double gate almost. Yeah,
pretty much. Yeah, it's a very common pattern to check some things on your client and then some other things on your back end. There are benefits to doing it only on the back end, or benefits for doing it only on the client. It all really depends on the situation. But in general, something as simple as, is the user even logged in? We can easily do that on the client alone, right? Then you maybe, for instance, we can think about the actual situation here. Is the user logged in is a simple question that on a client, we can very easily figure it out, right? But maybe we want to find out, is the user, part of this premium plan that our website, provides? Well, maybe client not necessarily know that, right? Like that's some information that is stored in our database that, we keep protected. We don't send that information to every client about who's a premium user, who isn't. So any client will not know that. Only the correct clients will know that. So to get that type of information, we do have to send a request to the backend to verify that, right?
Yeah.
So there are these situations generally that you'd use one or the other.
I guess because I've not interacted with backends before, that these thoughts didn't even cross my mind.
Yeah, and see, that's
I just forgot there was 2 places I could check, and one of them is going to be
absolutely
more appropriate.
Absolutely, yeah. And cool. Clearly you can think that there will be many other places you'll bump into that will also work differently. Even in Firebase itself, there will be different things that will have their own little rules. So working on that, that's again, reiterating why we went this way, and we did a bit of that Firebase to work a little bit on that intuition, how cloud works, right? And even if not cloud, how databases work.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Let's go back to code now that we've done that.
Yep.
Excellent. We managed to do a little bit of that review.
Okay.
Yeah. So talk to me through the the index and upload.
I mean, the code itself is fairly simple. You've got a basic input form, which takes just takes the email and the password out of whatever you type in. It's got a simple script in here, which is part of the Firebase configuration, which stores all the stuff you need to, I guess, it's almost like a key to interact with Firebase. So also I skipped a bit here. There's some scripts for the Firebase app itself, and then that alone isn't enough, or at least it is if you just want to use the app. But if you want to use the authentication, you've got to put in this line. And I use the Firestore as well. And there are other facilities that Firebase has, and if you wanted to use them, you just write in the appropriate script. But I think this one always has to be first. And then it's linking to my app.js at the bottom.
Cool.
The upload HTML is pretty much the same. It's just a slightly different form. But there's also that, you probably might not have seen it from the live site, is that there's actually a navigation bar. I haven't styled it, but you've got the nav up here, so you can flick between the 2 pages.
Decent. Actually, you don't know this, but the first version of the exercise actually called for making a nav bar. And in the end, I was like, hey, just do it whichever way makes sense to you. I don't want to put it on. So it's funny that you went...
That took me a while to figure out, because I could have either done a nav bar, but then if you've got a nav bar, what's the home page going to be? And then if it's the sign up page, how's that going to differ from the login page? Is there a way that I can use the same form to sign in and sign up? So that actually took a while, and it was good practice just planning, I guess, the high level architecture, the layout of even such a simple thing that does 2 functions. Well, how best to put them between the 2? Because normally you wouldn't have a sign up page and an upload page.
Yeah,
they'd all be coming up as like modals or pop-ups within another page. But I thought, well, let me just keep it super simple and just get it working. So that was actually quite a hard part of the challenge, is working out, because normally on most websites you've got a nav bar, and then if you click login and sign up, it's all done. It's not really ever done on a page. It's always done in a modal.
Yeah.
So that was quite interesting.
Perfect. Yeah, they're on purpose, mate. I just really wanted you to figure out how to share that information between 2 separate HTML pages. In many other when you work with something like React, there's the whole concept of single page app. I'm sure you heard of that before. You don't necessarily deal with these kind of problems, but it's good to just ask yourself these questions that you had to when going through it. So very interesting.
Yeah, and obviously, if I was to progress this app any further, I would also have a log out feature and probably start to incorporate, I guess it would be a framework that does a lot of this for me. I think that Materialize was the one that was used in the tutorial that I initially looked at, because it saves you having to create and style all of these elements. They're just like a template. You just stick your stuff in, job done. So that page is pretty much the same. If I'm honest, I was unsure whether I had to copy all the other JavaScript information again. I suppose I could have deleted it to find out if that was the case, but I just literally copied and pasted the whole JavaScript on each page and just changed the forms.
Okay. That makes sense.
And then, I guess then if we just go to the the app page, which is basically split up between two major sections. You've got the sign in or sign up function there, and then the upload, which has two functions within it to upload to the two different places. The workaround that I mentioned, like if you're on one page and it's looking for it's got an event listener that's on the other page, it obviously gives me an error. I wrapped it in a try catch. So it tries to find this, the listener for this page. And then if it doesn't, it catches the error, but then does nothing with it.
Ooh.
So I found that nice little workaround. Again, there's probably a better way of doing it, but I got it working. So I was like,
super
okay,
nasty.
Cool. But it worked.
Yeah, fair enough. No, I'm glad you did get it working.
So on the sign up page, this logic works fine.
Okay, let's just look through it just for a second. So sign up form is, let's see where sign up form is being, oh, okay, you've got a query selector sign up form. That's the, yeah. Okay, so now we have the sign up form object. We add a event listener whenever it's submitted. You prevent the default, that's fine. And you read the values. And then you've got this asynchronous function. Firebase create, sure. Inside of it, you do a try and catch. Lovely. And inside of the try, we do await Firebase authentication, create user with email and password. Okay. And then if the response additional user info is new user, sign up form reset, congrats. Okay, so that's essentially confirming that things went through fine, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you catch any errors that may appear here and you log what the problem was. Perfect. So here, obviously, we're not using promises as far as I can see.
Doesn't the async and await mean it's a promise? Because I guess async and await is just different syntax for promises. Because what my theory is this firebase.auth function here, I wanted to wait for that to come back before it continued.
Yeah.
So I wrapped it in, I made up this Firebase create function and turned that to an async function. And by having an async function means I can use this await keyword, which essentially halts execution until that promise comes back. So then what it's doing here is it's then checking that promise when it does come back. And I can't remember where I think I must have dug this out of the actual object.
Okay.
So yeah, as far I believe, it is using promises.
Okay, cool.
In as much that the async, whenever you write a function as async, it returns a promise. Or one of those keywords does, at least. I was reading it this morning.
Decent.
So what I wanted.
No, go on.
What I wanted it to do is to not do this part of the code until this function was complete. Because when I didn't have async and await, it was firing this function and then saying, hey, congrats, you've got a new account. And it was like, well, hang on, it hasn't come back from the database yet. So I was like, how can I get it so it doesn't carry on the code? Yeah, because this the async await syntax makes it read like it's synchronous code. So as far as I can see, it's using promises and it's working as I planned.
Right. I mean, it's wonderful that it works. You're using async and await. You did verify that it indeed waits for that Firebase call to finish before running through this, if statement, right? You can verify that this happens kind of empirically.
Well, I would guess it wouldn't. That's what it's checking before it fires the alert. So if that had failed, then it wouldn't fire the alert and it would fire an error.
Yeah, I
think.
Right.
I may be wrong. I don't know.
I mean, it's very interesting control flow, right? Exercise, understanding, is it really waiting for it? Is it not? So there are ways you could figure it out. It's good it works the way you wrote it. I'm going to admit that, on JavaScript async await, I am not a specialist, but just from, logic, we can definitely figure out the answer here.
No, that's fair enough.
I'm going to make a contradicting bet that you are not using promises. And I'm not going to say I think I'm wrong because I don't know that, but I would expect then and catch or something along these lines being used somewhere there if it was a promise. I feel that this is one of the easy ways you can recognize a promise being used is that you have this then, and optionally you also have this, catch or on error or whatever else. And seeing that we're not seeing it right here, my guess is that we're not essentially using promises here, but I'm not confident about it. So I would say let's figure it out. It's a very good point that we got to right here. So I just thought if we look quickly in some documentation, I think we should be able to find the answer here. So if we just go to
this morning, actually,
Firebase authentication JavaScript.
Here we go.
Let's see if we can find out. Right, web. Let's see. Password and authentication. Create user with email and password. So let's see.
Yeah, I don't know if you can see my screen.
I was looking at mine just there, but let's see.
No.
Yeah, if that is the case, then you're the one who's right here. Yeah.
I mean, I'm not saying right. I mean, obviously, I know JavaScript isn't your strong point. So I'm not
anymore
claiming to know more than you, but it's just only because I was literally doing this about 2 hours ago, and where I was getting confused with because you've got async, you've got await, you've got then, you've got catch, you've got try and then catch. It's like, where the hell do all these fit in? But what I'm realizing is that async await means you don't need a lot of the other keywords. It sort of does all of it. It's syntactic sugar, basically, which I think they're fairly new, so you might not have used or seen them.
Maybe it wasn't so popular. I'm just gonna quickly catch up on
that you'd be able to
thing.
check.
Let's see what they say. Async functions enable us to write promise-based code as if it were synchronous. Okay. Yeah, it seems you're right. Async indeed will expect, it says, using async simply implies that a promise will be returned. And if a promise is not returned, JavaScript will automatically wrap it in a resolved promise with its value. So that's what it's saying. Yeah, I'm just looking also at the Firebase documentation. They don't explicitly use the word promise here, but that's what it looks like to me. And obviously, since you can use async, means that indeed you are getting a promise back there. So well done.
Okay, I guess that shows, if I'm explaining it to you, I must have learned it somewhat. So
so actually what I'm curious about is async. All right, JavaScript async, await, try, catch. How do people go about this? Error handling in async await in JavaScript. Can we see some code? Sorry about this quick catch up, but I just want to be sure that I understand your code well enough.
Yeah, because there is a chance that it might not be doing what I think it's doing. I might think it's waiting, but I think the fact that I made that conditional quite specific means that at some point I probably console logged the response and saw what part of that response object I wanted to check existed, which is this is new user thing. And I think I might have even got that from the docs thinking about it.
Okay.
In fact, I think that whole block is from the original docs.
Do you reckon? Because they don't do it with async await in the documentation.
No, they don't. They don't, exactly. But I converted it into an async function.
Yeah. Well done, mate.
Yeah, because it would have, I think from the docs, it would have had the try catch, but not the await or the encapsulating Firebase create async function, which is what I managed to.
Okay, no, perfect, mate. Like, I got a slight catch up on that, and it seems that indeed this is the way you want to be handling errors when dealing with async and await and promises. So all your assumptions were correct. I was wrong. Well done. And indeed, you're handling it pretty well. I suppose the only thing I'm going to point out here is that similarly to the previous exercise, we are catching a little bit too much here. So we only probably want to be try catching the block, of awaiting for the Firebase authentication create user with email and password, lines 20 to 22. Because if something is wrong with displaying the alert, for instance, we fuck something up of there, then the catch will catch that catch phrase will also run, whilst obviously we will not have the error at that stage. We will not have all that things that the catch statement is expecting, right? Do you see what I'm trying to say?
Roughly, but not specifically.
Right.
Which blocks are you saying would be better suited where?
So my suggestion is that we should only catch, in this case, the await Firebase authentication, so line 20 to 22. And the rest of the code, I would suggest that it runs outside of that try and catch, simply because, well, our error handling is suited, like the things that we have inside of our catch statement, so line 30, 34, that is suited for handling Firebase errors that have been produced from that promise that we are awaiting on line 20. That catch phrase, that catch statement, right, isn't created to handle lines 25 to 29. Like if, for instance, I don't know, sign up form reset, something goes wrong there at that line, okay? You will not handle this correctly because your handling currently is suited for, being provided an error object. That error object has to have a code and a message, and that's what your catch statement expects right now. So yeah, if something went wrong inside of the lines 25 to 29 in that if statement, if some error appeared, you wouldn't know that it's coming from there because you would be thinking that it's Firebase fucking up. Essentially, that's what would happen. You would get the same type of an error that you would have gotten if, for instance, your password was too short. Like obviously the message would be different, the code would be different, yes, but it would be the same type of behavior. You just get an alert, right? And you start thinking, oh, so what's wrong with my Firebase? But the truth is that, it's actually the sign up form reset that's breaking. But because you're catching, you're trying too big chunk of the code, you're essentially, you're hiding this error from yourself. That's kind of a common, issue with writing code is trying too many things. We're talking about putting too many things in your try statement. That's what I was trying to say. In your try scope, right? Where it's probably better to just focus your try statements on a specific thing that you want to be handling in your catch. Another way to go about it is to simply handle different errors in different ways. So I'm just quickly going to double check if you can do that in JavaScript again. So try catch multiple multiple errors. Let's see if you can do that. So you can have one catchphrase for one catchphrase for another thing. And no, according to Stack Overflow, you can't really do that. No, you can only have one catchphrase. So you can have one try and then one catch. And inside of it, you have to check what type of error is it. So, you inside of your catch statement on line 31, you essentially have to say, if error is instance of, like a Firebase error, then do what's already in there. But if the error is an instance of some other error, and then you'd have to figure out, okay, what other errors could the lines inside of the if statement throw? Then handle these separately, right? In my head, it makes it simpler to just wrap separate things with different try catches. So like I would wrap, the Firebase authentication with one try catch and handle it there. And then if you want, you can wrap the, if statement with another try and catch and handle its errors, in a separate way. But again, that's just, it's generally a minor comment on this logic here. It's just something to keep in mind, not to hide errors away from yourself. That's what we're trying to learn here.
Yes, and I recall we did this with the weather app when we rejigged it. There was, I guess, sub errors that can be handled specifically if we predict.
Correct.
So I think even in my notes I was looking, it was, preempt these errors beforehand and handle them accordingly. Because at the moment it's just like, hey, we've got an error. It's like, well, where's it from? And
correct.
What do you do with it? Whereas, by going through each stage, looking at what can go wrong at each stage, and this is where it helped actually writing out my workflow of the user. It's like, if it gets to this stage, if this doesn't work, then you've got two options. If that doesn't work, then you've got two options down here. And then, so understanding that control flow again.
Correct. Yeah. It's I have to say, just looking at code you're writing already, it's definitely improving. Your control flow is getting better. So all that, really good job, mate.
Yeah.
Cool. So we've gone through that. I'm just,
and then obviously,
so I just scroll up just quickly. Let's look at what we were seeing just before. I'm only trying to think whether it would be a good idea for us to put something verification at this stage to be like 100% sure that the code executes in the right order. But I think this will also come up when looking at the second part of the exercise. So uploading to database and storage. So I think we can look at the same problem, but just a little bit later. So let's just carry on, I would say.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
So with async functions, then basically you wrap the function in an async function and then invoke it, so that all that does there is fire that off.
Yeah. Geez, this is so much simpler than Python. You don't want to know what you have to do to get that
so
same
much simpler
thing.
than just promises. Yeah.
That too. Yeah, isn't it? Yeah. When you think about it.
So what I was saying, what I alluded to at the beginning of the conversation is, even if I'd have looked at async await a couple of months ago, I wouldn't have understood it. Whereas now I've gone back to it, I'm like, all right, I get it, and I know how to use it and why it's useful.
That's incredible.
And what it's doing under the hood. So the fact that you stopped me at promises, it worked in my favor, because I wouldn't have got it. I couldn't read and understand code enough to get what it was doing.
Yeah, fair play. Yeah.
So don't worry, it wasn't the wrong decision to say, Sam, leave promises alone. Let's move on to something else. So
sure,
very wise.
Cool.
Okay, so this is then I've actually started to add comments just to get into that habit. I've also been reading about how if your code and file names and variable names and function names are named well, you kind of don't need comments. So
absolutely.
That's something. But it's more just for me visually to separate. Hang on, where's this block start?
That's fine too. Yeah, it's. I think it's more about not doing every single line of code.
Yeah.
Comment. That's what some people do, and that's wrong. So if it makes your brain understand this code better, put in the comment, definitely.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because you can see from just like my day-to-day notes, they're all split up, indented, separated off, and that's just how my brain works. So
Yeah.
if this was just blocks of code, it would annoy me more than anything.
True. Yeah.
Okay, right. So same concept again. You're just getting the info out of the upload form. Well, yeah, you can read through it and tell me what works, what doesn't.
Yeah, let's see what we have here. So very similarly, right? You've got this big upload form, add event listener. Then you're getting the my file, and you access the first file that is being selected. I guess that this can provide you with more file than just one, so it's good you're getting that 0th file. Okay, so there's one flag right here, is that I'm not sure if, for instance, sort of what happens when a user presses submit before a file is selected. I feel that in this case, file to upload would be undefined or null, wouldn't it?
I don't know. I'd never even thought of that.
Let's give that a shot.
Did I sign up? Using the date.
Actually, it doesn't matter. That line will break before even submitting something. Let's see, what's the error?
Cannot read property name undefined.
Because something is undefined, and that undefined thing will probably be the file we're expecting. So it's app.js line 53. Let's have a look what that will be. Actually, just switch to the VS Code. That'll be easier for us to read. Okay, 53. Yeah, exactly. We have the file.files 0th element, and then we go .name. Well, obviously, since files is an empty array because we haven't selected any files yet, there is no 0th element. Therefore, it's undefined, and we cannot access name of undefined objects. That's where we're getting this error from. So yeah, just a quick note. I mean, I know you know how to handle this. We just want to do a quick check and return from this function if file to upload happens to be undefined, right?
Yeah, no, good point. Yeah, because I guess the user wouldn't know that because it wouldn't be able to see the console. But again, that's looking at a potential area where there could be an error. So it's predicting error handling again. It hadn't even dawned on my mind that you would click submit without uploading a file, but it's possible.
Oh, mate.
Good point. So it's almost looking at all the potential avenues that could go wrong, whereas I'm just assuming everything's going to go right and I'll deal with that.
Yeah, so this is actually where we could talk a little bit about test-driven development or writing tests.
Awesome.
I don't want to get into it too much though, because I don't think you should be learning about it right now. It is very essential, and I feel that, once you're a junior, it's definitely worth reading up, and anything above junior, you should know about tests and you should be writing tests. Yeah. It's essentially like, in few words, so just you have an idea, is when you're writing tests, you're asking yourself exactly these questions that I just asked myself. Okay, I'm at this stage in my code. What if I'm assuming something incorrectly? Because, we're making an assumption that file.files 0th element of that list contains something. Well, what if this assumption is wrong? Can we ever be in a situation where file.files 0th element is not defined? And very quickly, the answer to me is, yes, of course. If someone hasn't selected something, it's going to be undefined. So when you write tests, you're essentially asking yourself these questions a lot. Like you have a function and you say, okay, this function expects a file, for instance. Then the first thing you think about, okay, let's see how this function works where I provide it with a file when the file is defined. And also very quickly you should go into what happens when this file is not defined, when it's not provided. And what if this file is incorrect? Like maybe it's a file with 0 kilobytes. Does my functionality breaks? What if my file is too large and I cannot upload it to the storage, whatever else? So you start thinking of these like cases that can come in. And obviously it comes down to how good you are in imagining these sort of test scenarios. And it's an enormous discussion about, how to do tests, what you should be testing, whether you should be testing, surprisingly. So I just wanted to kind of mention it and leave it here, but just so you get an idea. Like, when we build tests, essentially you're asking yourself these questions. And just also to mention it quickly, when you have test-driven development, it's very interesting because you reverse the process of what happens first. You first write your tests and then you write your code. It's really weird to think about it this way. But you first think about, okay, well, I want to build a function that uploads files to the internet, to a web API. So I'm going to write tests that are all going to fail because I have no code, like no functionality is written yet. But I'm going to write these tests that are going to make these assumptions first. So they're going to assume, okay, this should work if I provide it with a correct file. This should not work if the file is undefined, etc., etc. And you build these tests first. And then once you've written all these tests that you can think about, only then you actually get to writing the code itself. And slowly, one by one, these tests start to succeed. They don't fail anymore. So you reverse the process essentially. It's a bit of again, it's a massive discussion, so I don't want to get into it as to whether one should be going that way. It's cool
because it's given me a new frame of reference now because I'd only ever looked at the possibility of the user does everything right and I'll handle that. So it's almost success handling.
Yes. Oh my God, that's a good way to put
it. Never really considered error handling as much. So to start to bring that in, like what this is what I'm hoping they do. What if they don't? Or what if something else goes wrong? How would I deal with that? So I'm very good at success handling.
I love the word. I don't think it's called this way, but you should coin it. You should name it this way. So
okay, I'm happy to
just something to think about.
But definitely think about it.
Okay. All right. So then we have a function that converts bytes to some size that you want to convert into. Just quickly going to brush through it and see if I see something questionable.
I'll pause you there and say that whole chunk is copied in on the basis that originally, when I was uploading to the database, it was stripping out the file size, but it was just giving it me in a big long number.
Okay.
I guess the number of bytes.
Yeah, you want to convert it.
So exactly, that's what this function does, is it takes that number, converts it, and then adds kilobytes, megabytes, whatever.
So it figures it out on its own.
Yeah, so I literally just lobbed that in, made sure I put it in the right place, and I got it working straight away. So I didn't actually write that bit, so don't worry about
That's fine.
all that, but it worked straight away.
Yeah, some strange syntax here, right? You have this $, curly brackets.
Would you like to explain the dollar signs? Would you like me to explain?
Go on.
With the dollar signs, which bit are you looking at? This?
Any of these,
Yeah, these backticks basically mean that it returns a string, but when you've got a $sign in the curly brackets, you can almost like inject stuff into it.
Yeah.
So it's almost like a variable.
Okay.
So it's just a way of almost having a string within a string, if that makes sense.
It does.
Kind of.
Yeah, I'm glad you know this.
I think I've explained it well. I can read it. Yeah.
Yeah, perfect. That looks fine. Let's see the pull out metadata from file. Okay, so you're creating this object called file metadata. You're getting the name, the bytes to size from the size, and extension from the type. Perfect. I'm going to ask you a question at this stage already. So a little bit earlier, a little bit sooner in this code, we actually are defining a variable called, right here, file to upload. So you have this file called file to upload, and it's essentially file.files 0th element. Yeah. Now, later in code, on line 53, we again access file.files 0, and then again on line 66, 67, 68, we also do file.files 0. So all these times we're accessing this 0th element of this array files that are, within that file. Whilst we already done that on line 51, didn't we? We defined this file to upload, this thing that we could be using everywhere. I was wondering if that just simply hasn't occurred to you, or what was any other reasoning behind using file.file?
I would guess what I'd done is created file to upload because I knew I'd be using it more than once, but then reverted back to on line 53. I think let me just put it in manually rather than the newly created variable, if that makes sense.
Okay.
So I probably I did forget to revert back to file to upload.
Okay.
I mean, they're essentially the same thing, but I think at some stage I would have let me just get it working and then forget to go back and update it back
Gotcha.
to the
All right.
the more efficient. So yeah, I can see instantly. I can just put file to upload.name.
Correct. Yeah.
Um,
There's a number of reasons why you want to be doing this way. If you feel that you know why is it that you should be doing that way and you just kind of overlooked it, then that's fine. We can carry on.
yeah.
Yeah.
No, but good spot. Yeah, because I hadn't reviewed my own code to notice that.
Yeah, fair play. Okay, let's carry on. So now we're making this async function double upload. Okay, let's scroll through and just check when are we calling it. So let's go all the way
Right
down.
at the bottom.
Yep, so it's similar pattern to what we've been doing before,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, perfect. So now let's read through it. We have a storage reference, and interestingly, here we are using then and catch. How about that? And then let's scroll a little bit further. Let's see what else we have in here. Yeah, just a little bit more. I want to see what's after that catch. Nothing. Interesting. Okay. Right. Right. Okay, so let's go up and let's read through that. Yeah, actually that's very useful. Yeah, we can read this a little bit more easily. So, obviously we can observe that you're doing this storage operation first and then the database operation after that, right? We probably want to find out what your storage ref and DB are. So let's find where they're being defined. If you can find that for me, the storage ref and DB, where are we defining these?
I think those are... Yeah, here we
Gotcha.
go.
Right, so DB is
Yeah,
here.
sorry, I didn't explain that.
No, it's fine. Okay.
So yeah, DB's there, but it's basically a quicker way of calling the let's upload to the Firestore and storage. I noticed the docs were using var, which is old school.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised by that, to be honest.
Yeah. So that's where they're being.
Okay.
It's just like I would guess it's just it's just a more efficient way rather than having to write firebase.storage.this.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah. Okay, so now we have storage, but when did we find storage ref? That has to be defined somewhere. So let's try to look for that. There it is. Okay, storage ref. Yeah, Firebase storage. Funny enough, here you actually do the the long way. You go firebase.storage, so you don't actually use what you define on the other page now, do you?
That's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, probably just forgot because I can see using the database in that way. So I'm sure this was just an oversight.
Yeah. Again, that's me just trying to get stuff working and then forgetting to go back and.
That's fine, mate.
That's no good spot.
That's all. This is what this was about. So.
And I think also is when I set up using the official docs, I had the code in the right place, didn't know what it did. And so technically that line of code is redundant. It doesn't even do anything. So even though you can read the documents and know how to...
It's not redundant though, I have to say.
Where do I reference storage then?
Oh, this line. Yes, this line is redundant. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I thought you were talking about the storage ref.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whereas, DB I use, but storage, I set it up, but then didn't use it. So that just goes to highlight, you can still read the documents, understand code, but then without going over your own code, realize you've just...
very easy to oversight something like that. So
to overlook again, good practice. So, but
Okay, so we have that storage ref. Obviously there we are using this ref function and then a child function. Did these two things cause you a lot of trouble? Are you understanding what they do or not quite? I can see from your face that not so much, is it?
Yeah. The storage reference and uploading to, basically understanding this line, or at least this part of the code, took a while to get used to, because if you don't know the inner workings of how the database is set up or how Firebase works, these functions mean nothing. But then once I understood what storage, because that's basically, these are chained functions essentially.
They are, yeah.
Then once I realized what it was, I knew it's almost like targeting. It's like you're aiming at the database, then you're aiming at the reference, then you're aiming at the child, and it's like knowing which. Sorry, I've gone away from the mic.
That's fine,
knowing
yeah.
which arguments to put in at which stage, that was actually challenging. But again, I got it working.
Okay.
Somewhat by trial and error, but also working it out as well.
Do you want to actually go back to your Firebase console and have a look where our files are being uploaded? Let's just look at that. Because, what we're referencing here with this, ref child and all that should be reflected one way or another in our Firebase storage. So if we go away from rules, if you go to the files themselves. Yeah. So here they are, and they're uploaded in the root of that directory. So it's I suppose the concept of these references and all that can be a little bit confusing, especially that database handles it differently than storage, like online database and online storages would handle this whole concept a little bit differently, right? By the way, is this code live? If we edit this code right here, will we get changes in here? Do you mind if we do a quick exercise right here, just to kind of maybe highlight what we've been doing there? Because it's good you got it to work, but I feel maybe it would be also beneficial for you to understand a little bit more about why is it written this way. So go to Firebase documentation for storage, and let's actually look at the source and find it. Probably if you just go to, if you have it there, that's fine. But wherever you're in Firebase, there's always a button called Go to Docs. If you just open a new tab.
Yes.
Yeah.
How handy.
Yeah.
And it opens up in a new tab. Great UX.
Yes. And that will, I thought this would point to the right thing, but it doesn't. And we're looking for storage. So if you scroll down, let's see if we can find storage there somewhere.
I'll figure out where I am in the...
Just scroll down a little bit more. Okay, get started for web, maybe that would be it. Or here we could find storage somewhere. No, that's just setting it up, isn't it? So let's scroll down to, storage. Perfect. And now web. And where are we? Upload files. Yeah, that's what we want to be looking at. Superb. Okay, so let's find some code example. That's the easiest way to...
yes. Idea. This is where I did struggle.
Yeah, cool. So let's see. It tells us to create this ref, and that's essentially what I want to focus your attention on right now. It suggests that create that root reference, and then inside of that create a child with a file name, right? Mountains.jpg, etc., etc. So let's see what that ref does. That's what I'm trying to understand here. Can you find some, like on this page, can you scroll up maybe? Did they talk about ref already, or do they talk about it a little bit? Yeah, probably. Yeah, there's going to be a lot of reference.
Yeah.
No. Just scroll up. No, I don't think they speak about it right here.
Oh yeah, I guess it's just short for reference.
It is, yeah. You know what? I'm just going to very quickly go and do a similar search on my end.
Yeah, because I remember looking at this specific block of code here and thinking, I kind of get what it's doing, and if my file was called mountains, it would make sense, but I couldn't work out how to change these sort of sub-references depending on what file I was uploading.
Yeah.
So I thought, sod it, let me just whack it in. Let me just use this and just keep it simple. Because I think if you then wanted to pluck out some more info or put it in a specific subfolder or a subdirectory, that's when
the question, yeah.
That story, So, but I knew I was just get it into storage, job done.
Yes. Well, But it's great you got to work in one way or another because the specification just called for putting it up somewhere. But I already found what we want to be looking at. If you look on the left on the sidebar, just before upload files, there's a whole section called create a reference. And that is where we want to...
Before we go on, I've just realized where I was getting confused because you have storage ref here.
Yeah.
And then it's got ref there. And I was like... Why is it using storage ref here and ref here? And that's what's confusing me.
So very quick answer. They just simply changed the name of the variable between examples. Simple as that. Like here they try to just in general refer to things by their names, like mountains reference, mountain image reference, just general storage reference, to get your idea that there are different references. But from then on, they just go like, okay, whatever reference you have, let's put a file to it or let's do stuff to it. But they just abbreviate it to just ref and they expect you to kind of catch up. That happens in documentation sometimes, yeah.
Buggers. Yeah, I didn't. And I think that's why my code looks a little odd and there's a couple of redundant things in there.
Fair enough.
But also, I don't believe I checked this page.
Oh, all right. Fair enough.
Or did I?
Well, see, that's actually a pretty interesting piece of information they give you right here. If you go on the very top, they speak of something pretty key here. So they say your files are stored in a Google Cloud storage bucket. The files in this bucket, so don't worry about what bucket is, but we'll just kind of use some logic to figure it out. The file in this bucket are presented in a hierarchical structure, just like the file system on your local hard disk. So that, I think, is a very important thing to understand about online storage, like cloud storage. The same way on your local hard drive, you're going to have, your drive and then a folder A, folder B, folder C, and then an actual file.
Yeah.
It works very similarly online, okay? So then they say, by creating a reference to a file, your app gains access to it. These references can then be used to upload or download, get or update metadata, or delete the file. A reference can either point to a specific file or to a higher level node in the hierarchy, right? So the reason I want you to kind of just get an idea of what these references are in this case is simply so that you don't write meaningless code. Although I kind of feeling like we're getting a little bit too deep into Firebase specific, and it's something you probably won't be using that much in the future anyway. But just to catch up on that thing quickly, think about reference being something like a pointer to a particular place somewhere on your hard drive. You know how I don't know if you can do it on Mac, but on Windows you can make links to files. You can have a file somewhere, but you can also have like a link to it. So
an alias.
Yeah, kind of like an alias. Yeah, I suppose you could. That would be an equivalent in Mac, I guess, right? So your file actually is, somewhere on your hard drive, but you can create that sort of an alias, a link, put it on your desktop, so it's easier to access that particular thing. So it's a similar concept here. In this case, your file on your hard drive is your file somewhere on the that online storage database, right? Sorry, not database. Let's not confuse terms. On that online storage bucket somewhere in that hard drive, right? And the reference to it is kind of like a link to your local file. It simply points, hey, this is the location that we want to be talking about. So these references are simply objects that are defining, a point, in space somewhere in that storage bucket, right? And when you call the, Firebase storage.ref, you're essentially just getting like a root of your, quote unquote, online hard drive that you're being given access to. On your local hard drive, you have, your root directory, and then you have your, home directories and where your files live. And it's just a hierarchical system. Essentially, same thing happens here, right? And then the way you navigate through it is by first grabbing the root of that online bucket by calling, Firebase storage.ref, and you can actually see it right here. You have that example on that same page. I don't know if you can see it, right? The Firebase.storage gets reference to that, Firebase storage object, and from that we query the reference to the root. If we just say ref and then provide no parameters to that function, it's just going to give us a root of our storage, Like the level 0, think of any other way to call it to make sense to you.
Yeah.
Like this is where we start from. And then we can access and get deeper and deeper and go into folders and folders and folders. So they even speak about it right below that. They say, if you scroll just a tiny bit lower, you can create a reference to a lower level in the trees, say images space.jpg by using child method on an existing reference, right? And they explain essentially the logic behind, what you're doing essentially on that one line of code, right? You first grab a reference to like a root of your hierarchy, and then you just say, okay, well, from that root, I actually want to create a child, either directly in the root, in which case you say like mountain.jpg, or what do you do currently? You say, the file name in your code. So it puts it in the root of it. But you could say, uploaded images / and then the name of the file that you're uploading. And that would simply say, okay, from the root, from the root references that we acquired, let's just, go deeper into like a folder. And if the folder doesn't exist, then the Firebase would create it for you directly.
Yeah.
Just to put it in practice, do you mind if we modify the code just slightly to see
cool.
that exact thing happening?
Yeah. I mean, while you've been talking about it, I've realized that I neglected to use the references to search. Sorry, I neglected to use the official documentation to search within. Like whenever I had a query, I would go to Google and look at almost like unofficial answers, completely forgetting to search within the official.
It helps a lot.
Answers.
It helps a lot to just go here.
So yeah, like weirdly, I've never even looked at this page, which is ridiculous. But
I mean, I don't blame you. It's quite natural. Like you start working on something and you never read the instructions, isn't it? We all do that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. I'll play with it until I need the instructions, and then I'll find the line I need, go back to playing it.
Cool.
Okay.
So all I want you to do is we're going to separate accessing that root of the storage and then getting a reference to a file we're about to create. So just after you do ref and then open close brackets, I want you to create a new line. So line 53.
Yeah.
Yeah, we got firebase.storage exactly right here. And you want to put that on a new line. And here we're going to make another variable. We're going to call it file reference, not storage reference, but just file reference or something.
Oh.
Yeah, and that's going to be equal to, and then storage reference.child. We want to,
you don't need that, do you? Yeah.
Yeah, because you already defined that root. We could even call it storage root or whatever else, right, to make it even more explicit right here. And all we're saying, okay, we have a root to our storage. This is like, the basis of our online hard drive. And from it, we want to navigate to some directory. And right now, by saying, storage reference, that storage root.child, and then providing just a file name, we are simply saying, okay, in that root, create a file. But I want to introduce a folder here. So to be able to do that, we simply have to change, how we access that child, and simply provide it, like a folder structure to it by giving it like a forward slash. So all you'd have to do here is in that child function, just before you call file.files.0, just put a string over here. Yeah, just before that, and just call it, in that string, make it like uploads or whatever else you want, right? Yeah, and then plus. Yeah, and just plus that because we want to add those two strings, and uploads will require a forward slash after its name. So uploads forward slash, right? So that essentially will say upload slash and then whatever was the file name. That's what this reference will resolve to. Does that make sense?
It does, yeah.
Okay, so if we go,
used or done that before, but that's cool.
If we try to compile this and look at our app, then we upload a file, it will indeed go to this newly created folder called uploads, and our files will start landing there instead. You're right.
Even if
you're
file
right.
ref,
it's not used. We have to change that and start using it. Yeah. So instead of storage ref.put, we have to say file ref.put.
This one.
That's right, yeah. Correct, because our storage ref is just a pointer to our root. It's not pointing to any file. We can't put files to, to our root directory. We can only put files to a reference that points to a file already.
Gotcha.
Right, so let's try choosing a file. Although we're not,
click the wrong button.
We may not be authenticated, but let's figure out if we are in a bit. And submit, see what happens. No, we do need to sign in, yeah. Let's do that quick. Yeah, sorry for taking you on this long journey understanding this, but I felt like leaving you without understanding what those references in storage are may leave like a big hole that later will potentially fire back
brilliant.
on you. Again, this is very Firebase specific, but in other type of online
concepts will still apply.
Exactly, that you normally will have some sort of online bucket, a reference to its root, and then from there you navigate to some kind of lower level directories. Yeah, so if we just refresh that. By the way, if you want an easier way of refreshing, you can just navigate to another tab and then back into the previous one. I think that refreshes it as well. So if you go to rules and then back to files, that will not reload the entire page, but just the files inside of it.
Gotcha, yeah, because the...
Makes sense?
Yes. So in here, we should have...
Correct.
There it is. And there he is.
Oh, what is it? Oh, handsome. Right.
Cool.
Okay.
Oh, that's worth knowing. Wicked.
Yeah, just like a small appendix to what we've just been seeing there.
Would you need that /?
You should. What this means is that you probably, yes, you do, but I know why this is happening.
Yeah, I've just figured it as well, I think.
All right, go on. No.
Because
that's not gonna compile,
that's the string. I don't know if that'll work, but to me, you wouldn't have the / within the string because that's why it's appearing here.
Yeah, but that's invalid syntax. That's not correct JavaScript. Yeah, because just a / outside of a string means divide. So you divide plus a file. That's not going to work.
Okay, so how?
Let's think about it. All right. So an easy way to debug something like this would be to simply stop execution at this stage and verify what is the file's 0th element name. Did you get any luck using the debugger recently or not so much?
No, I didn't need to do much debugging in general, really.
Okay.
Just logged a few console logs, but not enough that made me think, oh, maybe I should be using a debugger here because it was just.
Do you wanna just quickly do that so we can figure out what's happening there?
Okay.
So let's.
Where do you want me to put the?
Just above this line.
Where it is.
Yeah, you can leave it this way, and just above that line, just write debugger, right, and semicolon, and we have to put it in the right indentation, I suppose, to make it readable. Okay. So also to get it easier to debug at this stage, let's assign this child path, the uploads plus file something, to a variable. So just before we go into debugger, let's copy all the stuff that is inside of the child function and assign it to a variable. That is right. And put that child inside of the child function, right? Wicked. All right. Yeah. So now when the debugger stops, we can simply figure out, okay, what is the variable child containing? And we'll get an answer of, or at least we get some clues about where are we going wrong.
Okay.
There we go. Okay. So let's, we want to be looking at variables. They're on the right. And yeah, we have this thing called child. Do you see it? In the scope, local child.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. Right, so this actually tells us, it's correct. That doesn't sound right. Like if we, for instance, saw 2 forward slashes, maybe that would make sense, right? So we at least know that this part of our assumption is correct. Like we're not fucking anything up like right there. Because my assumption was also maybe that the name of the file has a forward slash at the beginning of it. Like each file just contains a forward slash. And when we add those two together, there's suddenly 2 of them. But because we did that little extra step right here, we can verify that doesn't happen. Clearly, you could have just printed child. You could just do console log child, and you would have found that as well. But I just want to get you using more debugger, so we did it this way instead.
Yes, no, good practice.
Yeah. So what's your intuition? Why we still are seeing that forward slash there? What's your thinking? All and right. give it 15 seconds, but no more. It's not a big problem, I think.
Well, to me, it's appearing because it's still part of the string. But obviously that forward slash creates a new folder.
That's right. If we didn't put it there.
So I need it to create a new folder, but without it being part of the string. But I don't know how I'd do that.
Okay, that's one way to think about it. My guess here is going to be, and by the way, you're thinking in the right direction, but my guess here would be simply that this is the way Firebase displays folders. It just puts that forward slash at the end. Let's try to verify that.
So how would I do that? Oh, okay, yeah. So get rid of it. No, because then that'll mean it won't be a folder anymore.
I'm literally just going to look up a tutorial on Fire Storage and see the moment somebody else, creates a folder, does it have those forward slashes? Because if other people see it, then, big chances that this is the reason why we're getting this type of behavior. So I'm not going to watch through the tutorial to learn anything. I'm literally just going to look, in the console when they're getting a folder. Do they see that forward slash as well or not? Because if they are, we have our answer. That's just simply the way they display it. And if that's not the case, we'll just move ahead and we'll not worry about it anymore. Because again,
I wish I hadn't have asked now.
Say again?
Said I wish I hadn't have asked.
All right.
But no, this is all good practice.
Yeah, there is a forward slash. I'm seeing it right now. I'm going to check just another tutorial just to be sure, but I believe this is the case. Let's see. Do you ever go to the console? No, you haven't. Oh, no, he did. Oh, yeah, I think it was there. Yes. So easy way to verify it. Firebase just puts forward slashes to indicate that it's a folder. Yeah. All right.
Okay,
so
fair enough.
It's very easy to get into forever of debugging, of trying to find out why is it there, right? But sometimes the simplest answers are, are the correct ones. Okay, anyway, so let's carry on from there. Let's actually see the double upload logic and how is that doing? Okay, so we went through getting that reference a little bit different just so we get more understanding of it, and now trying to see how your function executes here, and how that sequentialism of it actually is being carried out. So surprisingly, you are using then and catch in this case. You haven't been doing it previously, but here you are. And this is the function you've been describing to me before, isn't it? The one that you said that at first you wanted to do it parallel, but in the end you had to do it so that one only executes after the other. So we already spoke about the rules and the reasoning behind why one of them stopped working, but the other one would still execute nonetheless. So obviously the storage one stopped, but the database one didn't stop you. That was because the rules were different. So there I mentioned that you probably want to be doing this sort of client-side checking for authentication. And I'm sure if we did a quick search through, if we just did a quick search through the documentation on authentication, there probably is some way to figure out is user logged in, something along these lines. Yes, exactly. There is a Firebase auth and then something called on auth state changed, I think. or something around these lines. Or even more so, no, there is a Firebase auth and then current user. And if that is not defined, that means that the user is not signed in. Simple as that. I'm gonna send you a link to that very page so you can. Not to that. That's a copy paste. How can I link you to that? Can I even? No, but okay. Well, if you go to that page, it's called Manage Users in the web authentication. Yeah, literally just one page down, there's this simple snippet that just checks if the user is authenticated.
Whereabouts are we looking again, sorry?
Oh, sorry, I sent you a link on WhatsApp. We can just look it up here. So if you go to authentication on the documentation, yeah, and go web, and manage users, a confusing name for figuring out if somebody's logged in or not. And if you just scroll a tiny bit down, there's going to be a little snippet that tells you that just a bit more. Right, there you go. So it says you can also get the currently signed in user by using the current user property. If a user isn't signed in, current user is null. So you remember how we said, we could get that information from the backend, but we could also do it on the client side. As simple as that. So if you just copy that Firebase auth current user, that little piece of code, and we'll paste it right into your code straight away so that we can do that checking.
Just that line or the whole block?
Just that. No, just that. Just that. That will be enough. Because what we will do is we'll simply return from that function if there is no user. So double upload. First thing we do is we're going to do that. We're going to check if the user exists on our client. Right. Yeah. And we simply say if user or if not user, that will also, check if it's not null. But you could say if user is equal to null. Then simply return. Don't do anything else. Right? So that's this bit we were discussing early on.
Okay.
Client side checking for authenticated user. If you want to make it even more streamlined, you could avoid even declaring the user variable and just say if Firebase auth current user is equal to null, then return, right? And you could make it one-liner. So we solved that first problem that kind of was causing you some of these headaches, right? That you were having this backend working for one, but not for the other. Now we're just doing it on client side. As simple as that, right?
Cool.
We know that our current user is going to be authenticated past that stage. So we fixed one of these issues, right? So now the second thing we really want to dig into now is why is it that you are awaiting it, but also using then and catch? And I want you to answer this. If you know why you're doing this, why is it that in the other functionality you don't do that, but you do the try and catch, but whilst here you don't do it? Is it again, you just got to work in this way and you never came back to refactor?
Yeah, I think
that's fine too.
When the put and the then, this is using the official docs way of doing it, and I just edited the code. Whereas the other one up top is one I manually did myself.
Okay.
But again, I got them both working. But I guess if I was to convert, I don't know.
Yeah, it is quite confusing logic, isn't it? Because essentially here we are, we have a different set of functionalities, isn't it, compared to the authentication. So it will be a little bit different. You did go ahead and figure out that with authentication you had that key called user something extra info, right? Something like that, and you were checking for the new user status of that, and based on that you were displaying the message or not. Whilst here you essentially are not doing that. Well, so one thing I probably show or say at this stage is that sure, I think it's great that you're working towards await and async, right? Async and await. But in this case, you're using both. You're using both promises and async and await, right? Just like I learned and you learned with me about an hour ago that essentially using await will move away that promises functionality from you, Well, does that make sense? What I just said?
Yes and no. And
Right. So
yeah, because I think await still uses promises. It just doesn't explicitly declare here's a new promise. So from what I gather, what it's doing is await means that it does return a promise, but then it's calling the then. It's got a thenable function, I think, as they call it. Whereas I think the other one, I didn't need to do anything after. I just got it and it did it. Whereas here, I've got to put the file, and then I run another function. It's like a chained.
Right.
function.
Okay. So again, I'm going to say something.
Yeah.
I could be completely wrong about this, but I think in this case you're doing both things. You're awaiting and you're also are using the promises functionality, using both of these methodologies at the same time. Well, since they're both providing you a way to do the same thing and one is supposed to be replacing the other, using both of them at the same time is kind of contradicting itself.
I've taken a part of one and using it with the other one when I didn't need to. I get you.
Yeah, I mean, essentially, await keyword expects a promise, right?
Yes.
I'm not sure what happens to it when you also when the promise it receives also has a then and a catch like we have in this case, right? So fileref.put returns a promise. That function alone returns a promise. And then to that promise, we are attaching the then and then the catch functions, right?
Yeah.
We're back to 2 months ago and doing promises, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But we're doing that. We're doing that thing over here. So we are operating on that promise. We have that promise object returned to us, and then we call a then on it, and then we call a catch on that promise object.
Yes.
And then at the same time, we're awaiting that promise. So we're doing both of these things at the same time. So the awaiting is meant to strip away the whole then and catch. It's meant to allow us to do this functionality without then and catch.
Yeah.
But in this particular case, we're doing both. So we're kind of contradicting ourselves. Again, I'm going to say it again. I could be completely wrong here, but as far as I understand this whole idea, we shouldn't have to use then and catch if we're doing await.
I think you're correct, yes.
Okay. So one way I would suggest fixing it easily, because there's two ways we can actually go about it. We can either get rid of promise part or we can get rid of the await part. Getting rid of the promise part will make it probably less headachy for you, because I know you hate promises, but it will require us to refactor a little bit more of the code.
Yeah.
Getting rid of the await will leave us with the promises code, unfortunately, but it's as simple as removing that keyword await. If we just get rid of that keyword await, the code will still run, and I believe it will compile and run in exactly same way. Just before you do it, though, I want to point to you why I think it will not change in any way. Well, essentially, await allows us to run synchronous code, right? Isn't it? Like await turns this asynchronous functionality of promises into more of a synchronous fashion. So the statements that are going to execute after the await keyword will only execute after something happens. And to maybe see it better, let's scroll up to our authentication where we've seen it a lot more clearly. So here we have line 20. We're awaiting for that Firebase authentication, and the lines in the if statement on line 25 will not execute until we get that response, right?
Yeah.
You're the one that told me this before. So this code, even though it is synchronous, so like it executes, line after line after line directly, will run asynchronously in a sense that it will await for the response to return before moving on, right? So the if statement will not execute until we have the response back, right?
Yeah.
If there was no if statement, if there was nothing after the await, then you could ask yourself the question, okay, well, what's the point of awaiting in the first place, right? If all we care about is just executing this one statement, but we're not doing anything in reaction to whether the statement, succeeded or not, why awaiting in the first place? What are we awaiting for? Like, you want to ask yourself, okay, we're awaiting what? We're awaiting something to happen so we can do something else. If if there is nothing to wait for, right? If there is no if statement, no checkups after that, then essentially this whole awaiting functionality is redundant when you think about it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
Am I
makes
making
sense.
sense here? Right? That
Yeah, I'm trying to work out what I was waiting for. And it's basically, I wanted to wait until that auth function had finished before I fired the alert of congrats, new
Correct.
account added.
Absolutely.
That's why I wanted to wait. Because
That's exactly
without
it, yeah.
the await,
Yeah.
I was getting the alert, although it was lower down in the code flow, it was still firing before the function above it had actually finished.
That's right.
Yeah.
And the only way you could have fixed this is by using the promises methodology here. So after the create user with email and password, after that line, you would simply do .then and pass a function. And within the body of that function, you would put that if statement. So
that makes a bit more sense. Then,
that's how you'd execute this, and essentially that's how you're doing it in the second functionality, aren't you? In the Apollo form,
makes sense now. Yeah.
But so just stay there. Just stay there just for a second longer. But the whole point of only await for things if there is something that needs to be waited for, right? If there's nothing that follows, if there's nothing that goes afterwards, you don't care to wait for stuff. You can just say, okay, well, things go and execute yourselves, but because there is no other code that needs to execute after that thing, there's no point for waiting for it. I mean, again, I'm oversimplifying things here just to prove the example here, right?
Yeah.
Maybe there are some reasonable cases why you may be wanting to do that, but in this case, we are clearly awaiting the response from this authentication service so that later we can display the alert only after it has happened, right? So that's what we've been awaiting. And now, having spoken about that, if we scroll down, let's look again at what happens, from the point we're awaiting. Yeah, right there. So if we, so we've got, if you scroll just a tiny bit lower, so we can see all of it. Yeah, perfect. See, if you look at the point we're calling await, so that line 83, from the letter A, you can see this long line being drawn down, right?
Yeah.
So you can see that at that scope of this code execution, right? The moment that it arrives at line 83, we're saying, okay, let's await for something, right? The thing is, there is nothing that follows. Nothing happens afterward. We're not doing anything afterwards. The same way I was explaining it to you before just then, I was saying, okay, we're awaiting to display the alert message, right? Where in here, we're not doing anything. We're not doing absolutely anything. So that's why I know that deleting that await will change completely nothing, because all your other logic is inside of those then and catch statements.
Yeah.
Then and catch functions. Then and catch functions using the promises functionality, right? So because you mix those two things together here, it still works because JavaScript.
I've made await redundant almost.
Essentially,
in this context. Yeah, that makes sense, because what's been funny or interesting is I finished writing this code at about, I don't know, 10 or 11 o'clock this morning, and then read for about an hour or two on async await. So
right.
I've understood it more since I finished the code, and obviously now I'm running through it. It's like, oh yeah, of course. So
right.
Good,
yep.
Good spot.
Nice.
So, get rid of it.
So literally by removing that, you have brought it back to promises functionality. This is a correct way of using promises to be able to perform what you wanted to do. Would you like us to give it a quick shot at turning it into async? Because it will not take long. It's just we'll have to move some of that code around.
Normally I would, but my brain's starting to fry a bit at the moment, if I'm honest. Yeah,
fair play.
Yeah.
Cool,
but that'll be, I'll make a note of refactoring, because that'll be good. Because that's what I was actually doing in some of the Code Academy exercises, was refactoring promises into async await.
Okay, good.
So
so that would be a great exercise for you. Try to turn this into an asynchronous, to a code using async await, because it already is asynchronous, but you want to do that using async await.
Yeah, cool. Sorry to the users, you're not going to be able to watch this, but yeah, my brain can't handle it at the moment.
We'll catch up. Yeah, we're already into a third hour, I think, of our call. Good job, mate.
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay, so Yeah, I'll probably leave it to you to figure it out. It's wonderful you got to work in with promises. It's kind of funny you used both methods at the same time. It's kind of annoying that JavaScript didn't tell you about it. A good sort of non-user friendly language would have screwed up and not let you do this. But I suppose no harm has been done in this case. Just a little bit awareness that we need to flag that right here. The fact that you have turned the previous function from promises to asynchronous proves that that you at least got some grounding for how to approach this. So that's all good. Yeah, great, perfect, man. I don't think I'm actually going to be reading through all that, but because it all sounds reasonable. So yeah, you're getting the collection for the database, you're finding a document, and you're setting that file metadata. That looks perfect as well. There you're using promises. You have this then and catch. You don't have the async await functionality right here. But that again is fine.
It's just clicked. I can see. Now I understand promises a bit more. I can see what then does. It's waiting for the promise to come back. Yeah. Then it does that function that follows.
Exactly. It's the same as if you took that code from your then scope and put it below the the DB collection, whatever, right? And just awaited the call for DB collection. Simple as that. Yeah. It's about moving that chunk of code away from that inception function thing that we're constructing here, right? I think the whole reason why async await exists is because people looked at this and they went like, well, it's kind of ugly. It's actually something that people refer to as callback hell. So callbacks within callbacks within callbacks. And that's what you're having here. You have this function defined called double upload that actually is being called within a callback of the event handler. So we're starting with that event handler, right? Inside of that event handler, we have a callback that then calls the double upload. That then calls a file reference put. And then within that, we have a callback in the then of that promise that then calls, DB collection. And within that, we have another callback that displays the alerts if we succeed, right? So in, and that became just too much. So that's the reasoning behind making things look a little bit more manageable by using async await.
Awesome. In a weird way, doing it two different ways, I've actually learned more about the whole concept.
Which is great.
By running through this today.
Yeah. Fantastic you went both ways. I didn't expect you to do it both ways, but it's great you added a little extra level of difficulty.
Yeah, but it's helped me see that I can do it both ways. So in some ways it's poetic.
It is.
But it lacks consistency in my code, so
that's fine, mate. Like next time you write this, you'll know which way to go, so that's fine too.
Yeah.
Cool.
Not promises.
Right. Okay, I think we can leave the exercise number 4. Is it number 4? Number 3.
Yeah.
3 and 4.
This is 3 and 4 combined. Yeah.
Yeah. So we can sign that off. Well done once again.
Splendid.
I was going to ask you about Git a bit. Do you want to just quickly show me how that's been going? Because I noticed you've been posting a lot about it on Instagram. Oh, wonderful!
There we go. Look at this.
Oh, new branches. Be proud of this.
What I've been doing is as we talked about, so keeping a master branch, which I don't F with, which funny enough I've just been doing for the last hour.
All right.
Have a dev branch, but then creating new branches off the dev one. And you can see up here, I've started to look at how to name the branches. So this was a feature, named the feature.
Amazing.
Did 3 commits on it, got it working, lobbed it back into the dev, and then merged it back into the master, but then skipped back to the dev, which is what I wasn't doing before.
Yeah.
So really getting the hang of how to organize it and how to not shoot yourself in the foot, which I've done a couple of times. So really, really enjoying that part.
That's fantastic, mate. Yeah, so here your master branch is sort of your production branch. We could almost put it this way. Your dev branch is your development branch that you execute things on. And then your feature branch is where you add new features. You could also have things like bug fixes, right? That would be another sort of bug fix / fixing the error message handling, whatever. But it's perfect that you're getting the idea of how this thing works. You normally wouldn't do this as a single developer working on one project, but you giving it a shot on your own will give you a great experience for working in a team, because that's essentially how a flow of working in a team would look like. And you'd probably have a lot more of them flying around.
I actually enjoy doing this even as a single developer, because you keep track of where you are, and almost by every time you create a new branch, you can, well, for me, I can relax a bit and almost treat it like a sandpit. I can piss about with it, do whatever I want, knowing it's not going to mess up either of the other two branches. So for me, mentally, it's how I would like to do it anyway. I just didn't know how to set it up, or even how to read Git graph. So even like this morning, I was looking at it and thinking, these three branches, these three nodes are all the same. Why is one higher than the other? And then I realized, well, it's because this line's here, and this line's here. So the sentences have to be vertical, but to me, this should all be horizontal. But without knowing how Git graph looks, you can get super confused, because I guess to the noob, you'd think, why is the master branch one commit ahead of the dev, which is one commit ahead of the feature branch? But it isn't. It's just the way that it's displayed.
Yes, essentially. You could also think about it in terms of, well, they also happened in a particular hierarchical, like chronological order. Like you first did it, but it's not always this case. So I'm just going to suggest it, but it doesn't always have to happen that, point above another point will always happen, after it. These can kind of happen in different orders. But it can also make you think about up is future, down is past. Sort of, right? Yeah. So this is also another reason why these three. But to be fair with you, you could draw them pretty much, on the same line, because they do represent the same code. If we look at it from that perspective.
Yeah. But enjoyed, learning about branching and getting used to that, and just managing my own branches. So that's cool. Plus, it looks cool. I like the colors on there.
Yeah, I think VS Code makes it very pretty. In other software isn't as nice, other IDEs. So, no, cool, mate. Well done.
Wicked.
That's amazing. You got that done, ticked off. Brilliant.
Sorted.
We could do a PR review. That would be a good one as well. If I reviewed your code, so you get an experience with that. But maybe let's do it on Portfolio, because there you'll be doing a lot more as well. So maybe let's do
cool. I've made a note of that. That's on my list.
Wicked. So, having reviewed, your code for that exercise, I don't think I would have much more to add on that. I mean, I guess we covered a lot of the pain points that you struggle with whilst doing this exercise. Nothing really in particular, came up that I feel you should be, really working yourself into, apart from what we already have said about this async awaits, try catching the right thing, maybe using more debugging and stuff. I probably should say it as well, just before we sign this off, that try catching such an enormous part of code, and then within a catch statement, not doing anything like you're doing with these event handlers. I mean, you probably know this already. It's not necessarily the way you want to be going about things. You got it working. You want to get it, out of the door. So fine, I'm not gonna judge that. But let's have it said that you probably want to figure out the right way to know which page you're on, and in these cases, execute the right thing, execute the right event handler, or attach yourself to the right event handler, right? So I guess now we're looking at what are we going to do next? What will be the next steps for you, mate? Yeah. Do you want to look at the Sam's job document, that thing we edited last time? So I'm just going to say it again. Well done completing that exercise. You're going to get a little bit of a clap from me.
And thank you for...
But really impressed.
Superbly curated challenge. No, I enjoyed it, mate. And it's a testament to your tutelage that I'm at this level.
Is that a word? Tutelage.
Tutelage.
Tutelage. Yeah. Oh my God. Right. So what do we have here? SAS. We're going to be doing that when doing the portfolio side. portfolio site itself. Brilliant. That's listed. I put in a few comments. I don't know if you managed to have a look through them. Right, can I ask you a quick favor? Could you move that page to the right of your screen? Because I want to keep your face in there as well. If you just hide that. Yeah, wicked. Cool. Okay, so now JR list.
Yeah, we can edit this bit out. But yeah, all that Jean did was he just reeled off his own list of these are the kind of things that you should know. So he wasn't sort of replacing what we talked about or anything. So that was what he just said. Normally, if I was hiring, these are the things that I'd have to look at.
Okay, well, let's see what already we have done. Yeah, that's what I was commenting. Like array methods, map, for each, reduce, filter. Like you don't know them by heart, but you know of them. You've used them.
Yeah.
Right? You know, fair play. I would almost like start editing this and just get rid of things that we think we could. We don't have to be looking at, so we have a clearer list.
Yes.
So array methods.
Use memo. I haven't actually used, but I kind of know what it does. Event listeners are pretty much done during this project, and it's one I can put it into the bracket of I know how to do it. I've probably forgotten some of it, but I can easily pick it up again. Yeah. CSS, promises. Oh, funny enough, we've done that today. Browser APIs. That's something I've done a bit on actually in the last couple of days, even using that file upload. That's actually an API and understanding web APIs, third-party APIs, interfaces. So all that needs is just a little, what's the word? Overarching conceptual knowledge of the difference between them. So nothing, I don't have to go and practice all of them or anything.
Okay, all right.
And he said, middlewares I just looked at. And he said, "Don't worry about it for now."
Yeah, middleware. Like I know of middleware more in the back end, like Express for instance.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe we're talking about completely different things, but there is Express for Node.js, and not quite sure how that applies to front end middlewares. I suppose it works in some way or another, but he said not to dig into middlewares in particular. Is that it?
Yeah, he just said leave it for now.
Yeah. Okay.
He wasn't by any means. It's almost like he, rather than look at this list, he just made his own, which is wicked because it's just to get another point of view. Looking at that list, I was like, yep. Maybe could do with a bit of a brush because it was mainly the DOM stuff, which I wouldn't say insecure about, but knew that it was a muscle that had atrophied. So just this last project's built that back up again.
So essentially, we've done everything from that JR list, have we? Apart from middlewares that we say not to do. You say use memo, custom hooks. Is that something you're aware of?
Not dabbled with those.
Right. Okay.
But they can come at a later date because I think. This learning is going to go on forever anyway. I think. Not learning custom hooks or use memo isn't going to hold me back at this stage, or at least prevent me starting to build a portfolio site. But I can just do it alongside.
Okay, all right,
as well.
All right, perfect. So if you don't mind, I'm going to access it as well.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, go nuts.
No, so I want to get these items formatted, and so we know what is actually left. So we did Firebase. That's a massive step ahead.
If it's okay with you, and you might be doing it anyway, is strike through them rather than delete them, just so I can.
How do you strike through?
Command Shift X. I don't know if you've got a Mac or not. So it's almost like ticking them off, or at least take them out and place them somewhere else.
Yep. I think I'll just do that
or
instead.
put them a different color, like color them green to say I'm done them or whatever. You decide, but just I'd like to have, I don't know, there's a part of me that still wants to keep part of that list to know what I've completed.
Done. Let's see. So do
it your way, mate. Just do it your way.
That's fine. I can't find the.
You can almost keep that JR list as a separate entity. I literally just lobbed it in the must just because that's where I typed it.
Okay, so you know what? Let's just actually separate them so we've got a bit of clarity
Yeah,
here.
that's absolutely fine, mate.
And I'm gonna do this and just bring these guys back. Wicked. Right, so here we've got Firebase that we completed. SAS we will do all together with this, so I'm almost gonna say, that can be here.
Yeah.
Which means that it's good because we're, according to our must list, we can actually move ahead to our portfolio site. That I'm just gonna mark, just bold this. And again, I'm just bolding it for now. Like, do strike, later if you feel like it. Like, I just can't find it on my interface. But that seems like we've pretty much gone through it for now. So what I'd recommend is maybe we look at tackling these guys next, and this will be the last thing we'll do before we move on to the portfolio side, because that looks like about a week or a couple of weeks of work, and that will also match with with the predictions we did that doing everything else will take a month, doing this will take a month. So if we still can manage to get it in a month, then we're sticking to our predictions, which would be great, right? If we could start setting these portfolios in about a month and a half. Right, so first I want to ask you about Redux just briefly. We are not going to be looking into doing more of it, are we? Yeah.
No.
That's fine.
Use context is the simpler version of it. Redux, I'd only really be able to dabble with it with a big app that's using a lot of state,
right?
Of which I don't really have access to, and I don't want to build one. So
yeah, that's cool.
I find it use context, just get a rough idea of that.
Okay. So yes, we would probably want to still do the terminal thing. We want to make you use more debugger. That's probably just as much as I can is to ask you to do so. If you don't feel like it, then there isn't much we can do.
Yeah.
But
would it be safe to give myself the rule no console logs, only use debugger from now on?
Yeah, but we kind of did it already and that didn't work. So
yeah, but if you say to me, don't use the console log, I won't. It's only in my head, I was like, I'll use the debugger if I need to do a lot of debugging and have to, look at a big control flow.
Yeah. For a
I'll
small,
endeavor to.
No, see, like in a smaller project, I probably would have said that, but for a portfolio side, it's just too big to only rely on that. Like, they're just things you would want to be doing with. So, I would just say, like, do your effort and try to use it more. Like, make sure that by the end of it, it's at least 30% of debugging is done using the debugger, not 5. Especially when you're building that portfolio side, try to think about the way I approached it today. We had some of these doubts, and I, declared it as a variable and just verified it using debugger. It's marginally longer to do it using a debugger, but at least you get a little bit of a, of work done this way. Right, dev prod merging. You've done that wonderfully. Rolling back. I don't think you've really done much of that, but again. Yeah.
No, I think, only because I think both of my project 1 and 2, I've done something to them where the current public builds aren't the ones I want, and I'm not quite sure how to safely
restore.
Yeah, but I guess that then comes in with gulp and understanding what a build is, because all I've done is I've run builds on both of them.
Yeah.
And something's changed, and because I don't understand builds, I don't know what I've done and how to unchange it. Yeah,
I mean, we will have to fix them sooner or later, so there'll be a point in the past where both of us will look at them and try to fix it. But I feel maybe that'll be just a point. That's what I'm thinking, because you want to showcase these things on a portfolio. So if we want to showcase them on a portfolio, they have to be correct. They have to work.
Exactly, yeah.
So we will have to figure it out.
One thing that has me on edge at the moment is both of those projects are technically currently public, but they're not in their best form.
Yeah. So that's what I'm kind of thinking. Maybe we could just do that one day that probably won't be more than 40 minutes quick call to just roll them back, bring the new changes over. Probably more in the sense of I'll do it with you watching. And this way,
I'm happy with that.
I'll explain things as we go. Unless you really fucked it up so badly it's unrecoverable, in which case
I don't think I will have done. All I've done is just overstep the mark, and I know I could probably just clone from an earlier commit and then just go from there. But then I would have sort of lost all the stuff in, from the initial project, all the commits and stuff.
Yeah,
which doesn't really matter.
Yeah, it may be often it is a way to fix some Git problems. So maybe that will
we'll have
be
a
necessary.
Dabble.
Okay,
we'll have a dabble.
So maybe we can set a call at some point and just go.
It'll have to be done because there'll be the two components of the portfolio site.
Yeah. I heard you mentioning that you will not think about putting your Firebase work in there. I highly encourage you to, even though it looks, crude.
Okay, that was going to be my next question. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Sorry.
All right, wicked. Yeah. I may at some point add some more styling to it, but I guess even in its current form, it just shows I can learn.
I would suggest, mate? Weirdly enough, I would suggest keeping it CSS free because it has a little bit of that. How can I explain this? To me, seeing that you have some projects that are looking nicely and some of them that are looking crude will give me a little bit of information about the fact that you understand that sometimes you just need to prove a functionality working and not focus on the looks. Like get an MVP out ASAP. So having one of these projects actually looking that way can get you some of these brownie points,
Cool.
And you definitely want to get any extra points by making it look pretty because you already have other things that look pretty. So you're not going to make any more on that. Whilst I'll go like, ooh, okay, cool. That guy, can not only work without React. That clearly shows it that you handled some event handlers there, basic DOM. So if we made it pretty, maybe it wouldn't be as clear, I think. But secondly, is you have the capacity of saying, okay, the looks here are unimportant. We want to just focus on the functionality. And so I'll get that little message from that project, I feel. As weird as this advice may sound. What do you think?
Brilliant. Less work for me. Love it.
Yeah, of course. All right, so then we're looking at creating. So we'll tackle that. Creating, merging pull requests. So we'll do that on your portfolio side. Together just once again so you can see it happen.
We've got it up here.
Yeah. Non-React DOM manipulation. I kind of feel
that's what we've kind of done,
didn't we?
Yeah.
Right, like creating elements.
I think you took that sentence into consideration when you created this project.
That's right. Yeah, because it was before Jean. Is that his name? Jean?
Yeah, Jean. Jean Howes. Do Brasil.
Oh, wow. Brazilian. Wow. Yeah, essentially. Okay, gulp. Yeah, why not? Like the rest is not going to take you long. So, you haven't got really that much more on it. So I would say if there are things left, then let's give gulp a go.
Gulp specifically, or the concept of build tools in general?
Both. You start with build tools, and then I will say, let's add to that this optional thing we had right here to actually create your simple build system. And I'll put together a simple exercise for you to do this. Okay.
Oh, cool.
That'll be. I know I said no more exercises.
No.
It will be. Just as simple as, convert CSS, the SAS to your CSS, maybe convert, minify your code, put it all into one folder and zip it up or something. That's the sort of principle behind the sort of build systems, that you have these steps and all have to happen, one after another, yada, yada, yada. It's very, very simple. They can be a lot more complicated, but we just want you to do something
at this
simple.
stage, I literally don't know anything other than npm run build and then...
Yeah.
Shit, what have I done?
So
where's my JavaScript gone?
Yeah, essentially. So understanding, what may be happening there. So I suppose understanding React build. So, what happens when you do those npm React build, yada, 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 different variation there. What do they do to your code? And why did they fuck it up? If you can get to that point, that'd be really good. So this is probably, a day of reading and maybe a day of building, possibly not even that. So if you can look some general sort of videos, and here, again, feel free to go back to watching tutorials and stuff. It was good to do it on the exercise, but feel free to go back to your normal routine. So look up what's the difference maybe between grunt and gulp. General overview videos on what are build system in web development. Just get a general concept. Why are they used for? Then understanding the React builds. And in the meantime, I'll send you a exercise to put together some simple gulp build system of your own. Yeah, cool. Interview skills. What did we mean by that?
I don't know.
Right, because that feels like we'll tackle this, couple of months from now, I think. I wouldn't mix it in for no good reason now.
I would take a guess that it's learning data structures and algorithms and how to do coding tests.
Right.
Maybe.
Okay, yeah, that could have been it, because we spoke about it briefly, didn't we?
Algorithms, I think the general gist is they're not that commonly used in tests in the UK, whereas a lot of YouTube videos are, you buy this big thick book, spend ages on leak code, and apply for FANG jobs, which isn't what I'm going to be doing. Yeah. But having a basic knowledge of data structures is on my list. And
let's put it down.
I mean, I'm guessing that's what we wrote.
Yeah, I think that was it. Yeah, I think that was it.
Because,
you're right.
Yeah, because I remember we talked about how, my soft skills and my communication skills, they're kind of all right. So it must have been more about the technical stuff.
Yeah, fair play. Okay. So if we think of more of these things, like data structures review, that's probably a good idea. Again, you could go really deep in here, understand sort of low level sort of hardware like Boolean logic and shit like that, and understanding what computers actually do, what is a memory, how do these things communicate and what way. I found it really useful, but then I had, a year to learn it in the uni. So I'm not entirely sure if I'd suggest you do that. I'd probably just put it on sort of, if one day you're on a holiday and you want to read about something, it's actually a pretty interesting history.
Stick it in an optional in some bracket somewhere. Because, because I'm finding now I'm back to, now my brain isn't getting completely frazzled every day. I can do my 3 hours in the morning, sort of chill out in the afternoon a bit, and then I've got a bit more energy in the evenings now, so I can do a bit more passive learning, and that's when I start to learn about data structures or something I can read about and follow rather than have to focus too much.
I know what you mean.
I actually like having that things to do in an evening list.
Okay, yeah. I find it really interesting, to be honest with you. The only problem
definitely would help as well, because even something as simple as knowing how memory works explains why creating an unused variable throws you some sort of error.
Yeah, exactly. Or why undefined.name returns an error, right? Why can't you access properties of undefined objects? The one thing that we should say at this stage is that JavaScript is so high level of an object of a language that you don't actually have to know that much to be able to use JavaScript. But it kind of helps to keep it on the back of your head sometimes. There are times where we're probably we should look more at sort of higher level structures like passing by reference, passing by value. We kind of briefly mentioned that last time when I showed you this example of how modifying an array will react differently than modifying a variable directly. I don't know if you remember, there was this brief snippet of code that I showed you. So that kind of binds to how these things work over here. That's the reasons is somewhere here. But again, if it's going to help you or not, I don't know. So that's why I'm sort of, leaving it an optional.
That's cool.
Right. So we said to brush up on MapReduce filter. I think I'll leave it an optional for now.
I think,
Passing,
I don't need to.
Passing props through multiple components you brushed up on already, haven't you?
Yeah, pretty much.
Cool. Pick up tiny freelance jobs. I feel that this is something that will be an optional once we get to job applications. Like if you're somewhere already like a month in and you see no results, then we probably want to start putting in some of that work as well when you may be wanting to get some work from there. Form input and validation. Again,
That's
I think
kind of what we've done on the project.
A bit, yes. Yeah, there is a bit more we could do on that. But again, I don't think this is so core. I don't know. Maybe that's just me. Just my experience working with forms essentially is that it's not rocket science. You just Google it at the moment you need it and you've got the answer, right? And Docker. I wish your friends said something about that because that's something I'm not sure about. What would be really cool? If we could post this roadmap on your Instagram, because you are followed by some actual developers as well, not just like people learning, but you've got some people who actually are coders already, right?
Yeah.
So it'd be lovely to just post this. I mean, obviously format it properly, but just boil it down to what do we think we should be doing next and what after that and what after that. So, starting with some of these guys, then going into doing the portfolio side and then applying. And for them to have a say, because I'm so on the fence about this one. Because I'm thinking, I think a lot of companies use Docker these days, but it is kind of irrelevant to web development as such. So let's leave it here for now. Maybe we'll do something about it later. Yeah. Miscellaneous API to store persist state between refreshes, store data more permanently MongoDB. We kind of look at that, right?
Yeah, we did. Yeah, I know what a non-relational database is now. SQL, NoSQL.
Incorporate Firebase, authentication, storing in the data. You've done all that like a champ. Build gulp grunt. Okay, we'll look into that. So I'm just going to get rid of this here. And I kind of feel like we're repeating ourselves.
Exactly. Yeah, that's what we did. Is that MISC list? You took it out and put it up into those 3 tiers above.
Right. Do you mind if I just?
Some of it is.
Do you mind if I just simplify this so we get a clearer picture? So actually, this seems to be our.
Oh, and that React Dev listing is just thing. I was looking at a job listing and it just listed those things. So just as a rough reference.
Okay.
But we've kind of done or included a lot of these. And I'll continue to do some going forward as well.
Yeah. Mate, to be honest with you, we're looking at, maybe just a couple of things. Doing the terminal.
Yeah.
Then doing the gulp. Because debugger, you just want to keep it in the back of your head,
Yeah.
From now on. At this stage, I don't know what other, suggestions to put right here. Yeah, so mate, I think that's that. I'm trying to think what to say.
Horrendous color. So I'm just highlighting what to do next, do this week.
Yeah, that is a horrendous color indeed.
Oh,
right.
I can't even read it.
Yeah, so try to look up some basic tutorial on terminal, how to navigate around, create a folder, possibly kill a process, sort of whatever else they suggest, just do a day on this sort of a thing, maybe even less than a day.
Yeah, say an hour tops.
And then get a bit on gulp. So here I'm also going to add, so if this is our sort of next steps that I want to look into, then fix the async await in the right? So go back to
Yep.
to that part and try to see if you can bring it back to async await if you find any troubles there. And we also thought about making a little bit better the randomization function in your coaching app. Did you get a chance to look into that, or?
No, but I've got it on another list somewhere.
Yeah, fair play. So,
but we can add it to.
I think I'll just pop it in. You know, just so we've got. I mean, again, spend max an hour doing this. Don't like sweat, because I just want you to think about it. If you can't figure it out, nothing wrong with it. Like I said. Okay, I'm going to use your horrible color to mark these as well.
Yeah, no, please change it.
Yep, there you go. So you know what these mean. Mate, so we're looking at max one more week, I think, if this is what we have. And we'll be looking into the portfolio site, I think.
Yeah, I'm happy with that.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
Right. All right, I'm back on your page then. What else to be said? I think it's the longest one we did so far.
No, I think that's it, because I think it was, do a code review, do a review of the process, look at the next steps. Initially, I was, potentially doing a portfolio, but we've got these other things just to lob in as an extra week. I'm good to go now. I'm excited. I've got a new list to attack.
I'll put together that gulp exercise very quickly, so you got that also.
Yeah, cool. I'm happy with the progress I've made so far, and also because I kind of I was thinking of not using that Firebase project in my portfolio, but there's absolutely no reason not to. So
I think it's great.
That's given me a bit more confidence, thinking, I've got 3 projects now in there. But obviously, it's not about the video I was watching yesterday is. You're better off having 1 or 2 projects that look good, that have good functionality and that aren't tutorials, rather than 10 that are just shitty little apps that don't really do anything.
I don't think 2 is the right number. I think 10 is, I agree, it's too many. But I wouldn't say 2 is a good number either. Because if we're talking projects, if you say something along the lines of, like completed, finished, websites for someone that contain a good amount of functionalities in there, then maybe I would agree with that. But if we're talking about very specific tiny projects that, here we're doing a little bit of API interaction, here we're doing a little bit of randomness, here we're doing, that Firebase cloud, interaction. They're very small. So they are separate in a sense, it would be good to sort of have those combined projects, but since we don't have it, I don't think there's anything wrong with having those tiny projects. And 10 is too much, but I think easily 5 or 6 are a good number. And the more specific they are, kind of almost sounds the better, because, if you want somebody who is interested, I need to know if that man can use an online API or if he can, write good JavaScript. Well, here's a project where I prove that I can, right?
Yeah.
Cool. So you'll have that. You'll have your, I suppose, your cousin, sister-in-law site.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, considering maybe whether we could review that at some point and brush it up and upload that as well, or and also we'll have the portfolio site itself. So approaching the sorry, there's some fucking spider on the wall next to me. Hello, buddy. Don't bite. Oh, he doesn't look nice. Other spiders around here look much better than this one. Yeah, I think I will tell him. Have you seen it?
Well, I just see a dot from here.
Yeah. Sorry about that.
Shit, I thought you swore in Spanish. We're speaking in English, you're Polish, and you swore in Spanish. And you're living in Cambodia.
And I'm learning Russian. That's right. Yeah. So anyway, the portfolio side, we want to make this the best of the best and have as much of the good stuff as you can. Obviously, we won't do Firebase authentication on it, I don't think.
Yeah.
But we want to make sure that it's spot on. So on that note, I mentioned maybe getting some friend designer doing the design for you. What's your thoughts on that now?
Yeah, I guess if I'm honest, I'm in two minds about the portfolio site in as much that half of me, or at least half of me, thinks it's best to just use a template and get the projects hosted and have them available as a demonstration of my work, and then or build the actual portfolio site as a project. I mean, both technically work. I'm just thinking of timescale more than anything. And even if I just use a template and have that up and running, and then go and build something myself, or even better, build it off the back of someone else's design. So yeah, obviously building it is better, but then a lot of the other school of thought is don't reinvent the wheel. Just get something that hosts the projects, because that's the demonstration.
I see what you're trying to say. Yeah.
So in my head, what I'd actually probably like to do is do both, because if a template exists, I could probably knock that up in a day or two, and then it's like, hey, I've got a portfolio, and then from that moment on, I'll have something to show, like a house for my projects. But then I'll also then maybe develop a badass house, almost like have an MVP.
Okay. Yeah, okay, I see where you're coming from. I wouldn't even have a straight answer for it, because you're right, yeah, like getting an MVP, just getting something up and running, working from there, even just leaving it there, there is reasons for it, why this could be a good idea. Like you said, not reinventing the wheel. I have reasons for why reinventing the wheel is a good idea, and that is, well, it's like if you point someone to your website to check your shit up, and you can claim that whatever you see there, it's built from ground up by me. You know, every interaction, every little thing they do on that website will work towards them knowing what you know. You know, whether there's a navbar, well, you know how to use a navbar. Whether there is a contact form, well, you know how to use a contact form. If it's using some third-party, plugin or library for doing contacts, well, you know how to use a third-party plugin. Yada yada yada, right? So you hosting some of these projects somewhere, well, you linking up to them, well, you know how to do that. So that's why I'm liking this idea of, as a web dev, to prove your point, prove your skills by building a website. But at the same time, I see your point about, not reinventing it. So frankly, mate, at this stage, I wouldn't even know what to tell you. Let's just think about it for the next couple of weeks. And,
But, I mean, don't get me wrong. I fully appreciate your point, and that it does make more sense. But I guess I'm looking at it from a time and effort angle. That having a it wouldn't be a bog standard template anyway. I'd tweak it to make it unique. But even if it's just, a bog standard house for my two projects, which I did build from scratch, that's just as likely to probably land me a job as having a badass house with the projects inside, if that makes sense. Like, it seems, obviously it's going to be job dependent, but in my head, I'm thinking that's a lot of extra effort that might not be needed. Okay.
I see what I mean.
But it by no means would mean that it would be wasted if I did it.
Well, all right. So one thing I'm thinking, we do need some place where you'll do SaaS, more of SaaS. We do need a place where you'll do more of debugger. So either way, we'll need another project that you will develop. And we all kind of been postponing these other things, thinking that, okay, you'll do that for the portfolio one. If we consider getting rid of that, and we'll have to introduce something else anyway. Right? Because I feel like if you just pick up somebody's template and like change a few things, maybe that isn't enough experience, because probably it's already made, right? With those two things, we're doing some debugging and we're doing some SaaS. So just thinking that, we'd be reducing the amount of effort, not completely like ridding of it by using a template, and we'd be introducing that extra project that we'd have to think about. Not to say that, it's a defining factor, but I think it gives another perspective on the choice here, right?
We don't have to have an answer yet. We got a week
or
so to ponder it. But it was just to give it another angle, in as much that.
Good point. No, I didn't think about it this way, but good point.
because I mean, I guess I'm just keen to have a house for my projects and just start applying, basically. And, I can see it from your angle as well, is get higher up before you apply. But there's also the other option is apply to get higher up, because then you know where those gaps are. Because if I start doing interviews and coding tests and whatnot, I'll get an idea of where I'm failing and what needs brushing up on.
Yeah.
Quicker.
No, true. Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. It was
It's
simply
like a feedback loop.
No, and that definitely makes sense. See, my logic wasn't that feedback loop is wrong or like that you shouldn't go through that process. My point is more that, well, okay, we'll find new things that we know that you should catch up on, which is perfect, but they will be added to an existing backlog. And since we already have items on this backlog, we won't replace them, will we? We won't go to the interview and find out, oh, you're missing out on npm commands, right? We won't just say, oh, let's screw everything else and just put that instead. And once you do that, you're ready. No, we'll still have these other things that will say, oh, it would be good if you can understand, cloud storage, for instance, that we just did, right? So my point was simply that, well, as long as we have some solid points on that backlog, which was the main points, like the main stuff, the optionals and the brief, where like, yeah, maybe at that stage we can carry on. But the main points to me was like, well, if they're still there, you'll have to get to it sooner or later, right? You'll have to catch up on these points sooner or later. So simply, it was about moving that moment when you start doing that feedback loop a little bit forward, because if we started now and we introduce some new items to our backlog, we're just stretching things out, but we're not necessarily speeding things up. That's kind of how it felt to me.
Yeah,
I get your point though as well, though, because of course you will get a lot of feedback from applying, and that's all true. And yeah, it was all about like, are we gaining anything by doing it now already? And I feel that now that we've done Firebase, if you took away the portfolio side project, then I would say, you're at a point that you probably want to you want to start doing it. Yeah, it's just that portfolio project is potentially there. So I would say, well, let's do that first. Either way we do it, once that's done, sure, we don't have anything else really that's holding us up. And more than anything, we don't know what else is holding you up. So we need that feedback, sure.
Yeah, and also if anything, because I guess there's the chance that I apply for a company and they what's the word? They're less fussed about where my level is. They can see my ability to learn. So spending an extra 3 months on stuff that, not that I didn't need, but so I get the impression some companies will probably say, okay, he looks like he can learn, we can train him, wicked, let's get him in. And others might say, he isn't quite ready yet. He isn't quite ready yet.
Okay.
But, if I don't apply to the companies that would have taken me, just another alternative,
good point.
I guess.
No, that's a fair way to see it. Yeah.
Because I guess it's not written in stone. I don't mean this in a sarcastic way, but whether I know Docker or not isn't really going to be a deal breaker on getting a position, if that makes sense.
I don't know that. That's the reason I'm questioning myself so much.
Yeah, but again, then it'll be what's the word? It'll be position specific. It's not like every job expects a certain level.
Yeah, that's exactly what I don't know right now. Because see, when I last did web dev, there's no way you could carry on without at least having like just tiny bit of understanding of Docker, just to get it running on your machine. So I'm thinking, but then at the same time, they can get you up to speed on it. And if they see you don't know Docker, like you could learn it in a day, which is why I'm like, maybe it's meaningless.
Yeah.
I'm
not saying it's meaningless, but I think that's the thing. Is that some companies will say, come back when you know Docker. Other companies will say, we'll teach you that.
Yeah. See, the thing is, I didn't even know Docker when I joined.
Yeah, and I'm thinking, the sooner I get... I see myself as like a fish swimming around, almost like a little slutty fish who's like swimming around waiting for the hooks. And I know that... some of those hooks are going to be easy to get. And once I get lifted out the water, I'll have a nice new home, and then they'll train me and I'll be getting paid to learn. Whereas the longer I leave that, I'm swimming around that pond learning stuff which may or may not be a deal breaker, but also not earning.
Yeah.
That makes sense. And again,
I know what you
it's-
mean. Yeah.
I'm not saying this just because I've got like that time and financial pressure, but just as an abstract concept to me, the sooner I can get hooked,
Yeah.
I then know what I need to learn and I get paid to do it.
Yeah.
And the sooner I can, that's only going to happen if I start being a slutty fish and start lobbing my
Sexy tail.
fish tail around. See what I'm saying?
You're right. It's a good way to see it. Yeah. I suppose what I'm, by the way, by no means disagreeing with you here, but what I'm looking at is what are your chances of getting hooked? That's all I'm saying. Yeah. And like you're essentially like, you have to swim high enough where the hooks are, isn't it? To be able to get, on board and carry on from there. And these are the questions I'm asking myself when I like review your skill. Keeping in mind, again, that, I could be totally out of touch with what things are necessary these days. But just that's kind of what my primary concern is, like, let's make sure that he covers at least, the bases that I think he should cover, right? But then it's a blurry line, let's be honest. You could have already crossed that stage, a month ago.
It's a blurry line, I think, because it will completely vary between the company, the people who are hiring, because some of them probably, potentially could have hired me 3 months ago just off potential, but then a lot of companies would look at my current level and think, no, he's not ready. But I guess my point is I would have got hooked potentially earlier, and then it doesn't matter. As soon as I get hooked, I'm sorted, basically, in as much that I'm on the path. I've got that first position. I've got someone's telling me a specific curriculum which is related to my income. And again, I'm not by any means dismissing what we've done here.
No, but I see your point. No, you're bringing up reasonable things. Yeah.
I mean, it's no right or wrong, but I mean, I'm fully aware also that the longer I do this, the higher the chance of me getting hooked is.
Essentially, yeah.
Because then, if I do then get the interview and I can demonstrate all of this stuff, it's going to be a more powerful position for me than if I'd have done it 2 months ago, especially if I'd have been doing it 2 months ago.
Exactly, because what's the problem here that I'm seeing? You are one of many people who are in the same position right now that will be applying to these jobs. So if a company's kind of merit is based on, if their requirements are, you just have to match our skill level. If you don't, that's it. Then it's going to be either way, right? It's going to be for you, for everybody else is going to be the same, right? Whoever matches the skill level will be taken to the interview. Whoever doesn't, that's it, right? So if we look only at this other type of companies that we're, assuming those two types here, if you look at that other type now, sure, they will look at a number of developers that are still underskilled and they say, hey, we'll bring you to our team and we'll train you and then you'll get up to the point. And we're making an assumption that potentially you're at that level already, right? To be picked up by one of these things. That's the whole discussion here. So the thing we have to keep in mind here is that there will be a lot of other people who will also be in that potential pool. And then how out of those people they will be choosing who gets in, who doesn't, right? And for some reason, then I have a feeling it will be those silly things like, oh, has he used a online storage? Has he used a build system? Has he used a Docker? Has he, done DOM manipulation? Like, I know we can train him with anything. Sure, we make that assumption as this, second type of company. But we have all these people that we potentially could train. Out of them, what will be the key factors that will guide us? And I'm sure there will be many others, like, your soft skills, whether you're communicative, whether you can show some history of good learning. And you've got that, so well done, right? You've got all your Git history, you've got your Instagram history, that's perfect, right? So you got a bit of that. You can show that you're a cool guy by those Instagram videos. Like, they can just watch 2 of them, but already realize that you're normal. Like, that helps a lot. I feel a lot of people forget about this, that, you want to show your personality because you will be working with other humans. They want to know what kind of guy you are, or kind of a girl, whatever, right? So you've got that covered, but then out of other things, what will be that's the question I'm asking myself. What will be the factors that in that pool of fishes will make them choose someone else but not you? And I don't know the answer. I'm trying to guess these things, but that's what.
Good point. Yeah, I guess I hadn't taken into consideration the other slutty fish.
Good way to say it.
And you know, these extra things here could be the extra little bra lift, or you know, something a bit, that little extra shine. But
there is a line past which we could just, you know, we could make this list infinite essentially.
Yeah.
And I don't want to do that. I understand the not even like I get that you're not on a timer, but you want to start. So I totally feel it, man, and I want to start as well. Which is why like having somebody else review it. It was great that, you know, your friend Jean has, you know, highlighted some things, but it didn't seem like it was an extensive list, and he didn't seem to have you know, brought up any of our optional points. So that's one good verification. Maybe another, you know, person doing that again would be I
know just the guy.
Yeah, and you know what? Actually, I've got a friend I could ask as well. Like, what would he say is the, you know, the must if you'd be getting a junior these days?
Yeah.
Because frankly, if we get anyone else to say, well, it's just more React and more, you know, DOM manipulation and more, you know, map and for each and stuff like that. If they just say the same, then okay, we get at least some good indication that we don't need to be looking at those optionals.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Right?
Yeah.
That's my thinking.
Yeah. No. Also valid. And like I said, like you said to me, I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm merely looking at it from a different angle and looking at it from both angles now. Yeah. Well, I mean, either way, I'm happy. It's just I was just looking at an alternative because I've been consuming a lot of YouTubers' content, and a lot of them just say, you know, like we talked about, apply early, apply even if you've got maybe 50% of the stuff on the job listing, because usually that job listing is written by a recruiter who just writes a load of things and hopes that they get someone who matches as many of those as possible.
Well, that is actually true.
And also it's possible that even if the company did write that list, they could potentially be willing to take you on at a lower level because you're less experienced, but still give you the job or on a lesser salary or whatever. So
very much so. Yeah.
So it's more like, I guess I'm just keen to open the feedback loop more than anything. Because that's how my brain works, is knowing what to do. What do I need to do to succeed? It's reverse engineering. And at the moment, our targets, you know, through no fault of ours, because we're not applying to a specific job that we can deconstruct and say, that's what we need to be doing. Like our target is, it's not even, I wouldn't even call it blurry. It's just, we don't know where the end is.
Yeah. Well, to me,
there isn't an end, but
no. So to me, the cutoff point was that portfolio project.
Yeah.
If we get rid of that, then again, you're right. We don't know where it is. But to me, like I always seen it like, let's cover some of these things. And I think it was also very variable. Like as I was seeing you code, both on Instagram in those, you know, live chats, reviewing your code, like my picture was getting clear that, okay, there is just a little bit more over here, a bit more over there. So 2 months ago, it wasn't as clear. That's how we sort of progressed, right? But at this stage where we are today, it seems pretty clear that, if anything, I would put up that portfolio project just as a final showcase. But again, I see your point too, mate. So like, if we take that away, then I would say you're pretty much done. You're pretty much there. You can do a bit more Docker, you can do a bit more terminal, you can do a bit more gulp, but you could easily get a job without knowing these things. So I said easily. I probably should say easily. It won't be easy. but
the difference between the two could be minimal. I mean, but also it could be the deal breaker.
But it could be the deal exactly. If you're standing next to a guy who's done exactly the same stuff.
I love learning. Like just looking at that list, I was like, oh, I'm looking forward to this week, just learning about Gulp and builds and stuff. But I could do that forever, and I will be doing it. But it was just more. Yeah, just I'm just keen to open the feedback loop.
Okay, so fair play. So, okay, what you make me think now is that I think I'll agree with you with going with some template project hosting. Because if I think about what I said before and things that would differentiate you from another guy who done exactly the same plus something else, it will not be the portfolio side, I think. It'll be another one of those tiny things. I think that, you could probably just go away with just using a template.
But here's the also interesting thing. The template I would probably use would be another technology, Gatsby.
Okay.
So even though I'm using a template, I'm still adding another thing to my repertoire.
Okay, yeah. It's a fair way to see it.
And I've got a feeling, I mean, this would be quite interesting. Where did I write this? Possibly on my portfolio notes, that there's another technology where you could basically host your projects on a back end and query that back end so they display in Gatsby.
Okay.
So even then, the portfolio site does then become a project in itself.
Okay.
Here we go. Contentful. So so it wasn't even just like a shitty HTML and CSS template. Like, here's a template, stick project 1 here, stick project 2 here, fill out your email at the bottom. There you go. There's your portfolio site. It will still look pretty cool. So these phases were optional. So we either use a template, get something up and running, or do phase 2, hard code it, don't use WordPress, which is the other option. And I'd be happy to do both, but at least by doing phase 1, I've at least got an MVP, and that means then I can still start applying.
Yeah.
I mean, there's nothing to stop me applying now, but obviously if it's presented better in a housed environment, those projects.
Well, I definitely get you to do SaaS before we go any further. So like the brief ones, sure, we can talk about it. But SaaS, so one way or another, we'd have to introduce that.
Well, I've covered SaaS, but never actually utilized it in a project.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I'm wondering if I could use it within Gatsby. Like just use the template and then just style it using SaaS or even some other framework.
Okay, mate. So how about we do it this way? We go ahead with doing terminal, gulp, and the other 2 points that we wrote about existing
I could do that in a couple of days, at least get a good knowledge on it.
Yeah. And then when you're done with these 4 things, we will review Gatsby, review those potential options for publishing your code, see what are the challenges waiting for you ahead, see if we can use SaaS somewhere in there so you get a bit of experience on that. And kind of make a call there. I feel that'll be easier because I haven't actually heard of Gatsby yet, so I'll have to check it out, and Contentful as well. We can check it out, see how that.
Yeah, that's cool. Like I said, these are just other options. You've got access to this document if you ever need to look at it. But it's just got. I mean, like I said, I've got all these notes about what kind of things to have on the portfolio, what not to include, what to link, and some examples down here.
Okay.
So there's nothing. Another option would be just to clone a portfolio from someone else that I liked. So it's almost like I did build it myself, and I just used it almost like a PSD to HTML conversion. Yeah. Which, although I've copied, I've still built it without instruction manual, I guess, so to speak. But
again, let's just worry about it next week, I suppose.
Yeah, cool. Like I say, we can ponder on it. We don't have to make a decision. But I was just throwing another.
No, I'm glad you brought it up. It's a fair point, and
please don't get me wrong. I know I agree with everything you're saying. I'm just looking at another angle, basically.
No, it's good you bringing it up. Yeah, that's the problem. There are benefits and drawbacks of both. So you've been doing it for a good while already, I suppose. Yeah. All right. Cool. I think we can call it a day. We should call it a night, if anything.
Aye. High fives all around. What time? Yeah. Shit. Dang. Mate. Thank you so much. Like, I really do appreciate all the effort you've put in. not just in the challenges, but just sitting here talking about code for 3 hours on
it's good fun.
Tuesday night.
No, I'm enjoying it. So far so good. I'm really happy seeing you slashing these exercises so fast recently, man. It's seeing my name on your Instagram as a void.jpg just makes it up for all the effort.
There you go, mate. That's the reward for all the the time and hours you put into me. But no, it's like I can feel the difference, and almost, I can see how you've seen it as well. Because when we were looking at my code and trying to get me to do stuff, even like 3-4 weeks ago, I guess pre-ed a bit, you must have been thinking you've got a lot of work to do, which would have been right. Whereas now it's like, right, I'm kind of getting it now. It's starting to click. It's only really minor stuff that's throwing me every now and again. And I know what to do nowadays. Whereas before, if I got stuck, I'd be like, well, shit, what do I do now? I wouldn't have a clue where to even start.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. The funny thing is that you'll watch this video in a year and you'll say that 10 times more. But you're correct. Yeah, it is a bit of that. Are you still doing Edibit, by the way? Like, do these like half an hour every day, or?
No, I haven't.
At all, or just not regularly?
At all, no. I think just because I wanted to dive into the project. I still have a note to do it, and I was planning on using it for a bit of map practice.
Cool.
I mean, just rewrite a lot of the stuff.
Yeah, since now you don't have like a solid exercise, maybe consider like just sneak it in every now and then throughout this week.
Yeah.
Seeing that we're doing those sort of secondary. Again, if you don't, that's fine. I just thought I think you yourself saw the amount of benefit you came from it, right?
Oh, so big time.
Making it like a regular thing. Like I'm speaking even more from my own exercise than even observing how you progressed. Like learn something cool about the language you're working in every now and then can really boost your skills altogether. So just consider it, honestly, because it's not a biggie if you don't. I suppose.
Yeah, I will do. Yeah, because it definitely played a big part in building that muscle. Because I went from hardly being able to do very easy to building up to almost doing medium stuff. Within the space of I think a week, maybe a week and a half.
Yeah,
definitely. It gave me the ability to then go on to the next challenge and I can do this. I
doubt. I doubt you would have tackled those async functions in Firebase just there without.
No, because I wouldn't have been able to write a function. It was that weird that the Edibit highlighted how weak that muscle was. I mean, I could have done it by looking it up. Like simple things. How do you write a function? What's the syntax for it?
Wow.
How do you declare it? How do you make an expression?
Right.
Like, oh shit. Whereas now it's like I can do it without referencing anything. I just think it, type it. Maybe it doesn't work. Change that. Works. Wicked.
Cool. All right. Well, like I said,
programming shit's easy, man. I'm joking. I know it's not.
Well, look at me, everyone. I'm the sexiest fish.
Slut fish. Brilliant.
So yes.
Okay then, mate.
Consider doing still a bit of that, but
it's up to you. Noted. Yeah, I've been making notes all today. I'll crack on with the list. I'll get a third eye to look at it, who's a hiring manager. That my mate. So
that's very valuable.
Yeah.
Okay. Before you do, let me know, and can we rewrite that list to like proper segments? Yeah. So he got like phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. That would be easier to comment on.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what. I will contact him. So feel free to edit that document and let me know when you're ready.
Okay.
And I'll run it by him.
Right.
But as I don't want you to feel like I'm overwriting or dismissing what you've put in that list. I'm just getting more ideas. So the more sources of information we get, the more
Oh no, but I suggested that.
Target a bit more efficient. Yeah, you did actually.
That.
To be fair,
yeah. I'm definitely down for that. No, definitely.
Yeah.
And you change that list yourself if you feel like it, bro. Like I thought that's what you're talking about. But getting other people to look at it and override it, I would like that because it's all me assuming that these are required things or things that could help.
Yeah.
I think I'm not wrong all the way. I think at least half of what you're doing.
Definitely.
Is very key.
I mean, doing all of these will not be wasted at all because it's all vital stuff. It's just at what point and how much.
Well, I guess we'll find out.
Neither of us know exactly.
Yeah, when you apply.
So I won't. I mean, he's already like said, whenever I need any help, just reach out. So whenever you're ready with that, I'll get that sorted.
Yep, that's very useful.
Yeah, I'll do my list. I'll maybe do a bit ahead a bit. And then we'll plan a day to do the tidy up Sam's other projects kits. And again, whenever you're ready.
Sure.
And then we'll look at the next phase, whichever shape or form that is.
Perfecto. Sounds
Sweet.
Good. All right.
Mate, thank you so much.
I'm proud we made it as far as this 4 hours talking about programming. I don't know if you could hear, but Marina's already screaming from the other room in the bed. Yes, please stop.
Bed.
Yeah. It's
Sorry,
like
Marina.
11:30 for us already.
Oh, mate. Yeah, shit. Right, go to bed, get some food, chill out. Cool. Thank you again so much. And
no worries.
Yeah, you give me a shout whenever you're ready and we'll go from there.
Best of luck. And once again, good job getting this exercise done.
Thank you, mate. Thank you, Master.
All right. Cool.
I learn everything from you.
All right, let's do another awkward.
Cut that out. That was a bit racist. All right, mate. See you later.
Take it easy. Yeah. Ciao.